Okay, so are we live? We are live, everybody. Welcome to Design Sport Day, everyone. This is my greatest pleasure to be hosting this marathon for you all, so we can all discuss about the future of sport industry, but also the event industry. And right now we have Yinka Hillary, who is my dear friend, but also a fantastic designer, who is actually going to take this very seriously. Yes, he's going to be running throughout the entire show. So he's going to tell you a few words in a second. But first off, I want to introduce you a bit the overall format. So as you have probably noticed, I'm not actually dressed up in my sport gear. I am Dr. Nelly Ben Hayoun. Yes, believe it or not, I do have a doctorate. We don't know how that happened, but it did happen. And when I'm not doing sport and when I'm not, fighting on the ring with my boxing gloves, then I'm looking for form of life on other planets. Yes, I work at this place, the SETI Institute, which is also known as the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence Institute. And today I'm talking to you straight, not from space, I'm talking to you straight from the Village Underground, which is a nightclub here in London where my design studio office is based. We are here in Nelly Ben Hayoun Studios. And we specialize in designing events, everyone. At Nelly Ben Hayoun Studio, we design experiences for you to become an astronaut in your living room while there is, volcano erupting on your lounge. There is dark energy being produced in the kitchen sink while there is sonic boom in your bathtub. But of course, of course, since we design experiences and since right now we're in the middle of the pandemic, then it's been a pretty, tough time for all of us to actually think about what the future of the industry is going to be like. And so, being a fan of sport, I thought, actually, you know what? This question about designing experience, this question about designing event to modify power structures, this question about sport and new politics, that is also something that you can start to unravel by looking at the sport and the sport industry and what they are doing right now. So today, everyone, we're going to be talking about, whether or not sports is still a collective thing. I mean, of course, today we are in a sport bar. I mean, call this place where we are all going to meet a good sport bar. There is no booze, unfortunately, although I do have some beer in my office that I might crack up eventually. But anyway, we will be swearing on that show as well. It's not like, CBS, whatever show. Yinka has already told me that if he wants, he can swear, and I'm totally fine with that. So you better be as well. But anyway, we will be discussing how sport can inform new practices in design, in architecture, but also across all disciplines, really. We'll be talking about new politics, new format for politics informed by sport. We'll be talking about the commonality between boxing, ballerina, dance floor and football, running and crafting, basketball and gallery exhibition. And then finally, we will be discussing what is the future of the event industry as a whole. So with that in mind, I cannot be more honored and delighted to introduce you to my dear friend, Yinka Hillary. Yinka, who is this legendary designer that I'm sure you know because he's all over the news everywhere. This is the Observer magazine, and you can see one of his latest piece of work in there. Better days are coming, I promise. Anyway, Yinka, let me do a proper introduction to you before we Yinka, you're a London-based multidisciplinary artist, designer from British and Nigerian heritage.
Yes.
Very important to you, the Nigerian heritage, because it informed pretty much all of your practice, which is a very colorful practice. And it became your trademark, really, how you start to think about design with colors, which so far has never been done, really. So you are color obsessed, and in 2017 you created and you funded your studio, and nowadays you're actually intervening within the realm of architecture, within the realm of design, within the realm of many different things. Also, I just want to say to everyone that Yinka and I, during the pandemic time, have had some pretty intense moments on Instagram because Yinka Hillary, ladies and gentlemen, he's spending his time sharing his beautiful results running, doing cycling. I mean, he's quite a beautiful man, I must say. He's got it all, and he's been working on his film movies over the summer,
No.
not just on his design practices. And so we thought it would be a great thing to do a sport event together. So this is what it is. And Yinka, actually, I'd love you to tell me what's the role of sport in your practice. And also, I know that you've done a skate park over the pandemic.
Yes.
Can you tell
Yep.
us a bit about that?
Well, first of all, thank you for my lovely introduction, Nelly. Yeah, so wow, I've been on lockdown for like 2 to 3 months. I've been at home, not really much in the studio. But before the pandemic, I was working on a skate park project in Lille, in France. A commission that was commissioned by La Condition, the public, this kind of cultural center in France. It was a commission by the Decathlon, and we were commissioned to basically design a skate park for the community. So we've been working on the project for nearly a year now. So I mean, I can't skate anyway. So I've been working with a few skateboarders in France, and getting their ideas and opinions on how the skate park should flow and what it should look like, and how how it's. I mean, is it usable? Is it going to work for skateboarders? But
Ah,
I'm here. I'm here.
you've
I'm here.
you're
I'm
back.
here.
You're
I'm here.
back. You're back. You're back. Yes, yes, you're back.
I'm back.
So
I'm back.
yeah, so you don't know. So basically, people have not tested your skate park just yet, of
They're
course.
going to be testing my skate park tonight at 6 p.m. 6
Boom!
p.m. The skate park is going to go live, and we're going to get some professional skateboarders to test out the skate park and give me my feedback if it works. So fingers crossed.
So
I
maybe
might,
you can tune in back there and tell us
yeah,
like live
yes,
special on this sports show. You can tell us whether
that's
or not
right,
the skate park has worked,
that's
or
right, that's
whether or
right.
not it doesn't work from afar. Because I guess that you had to design it from afar, which I guess is it's a whole new realm, isn't it, for you?
So yeah, it is, yeah, because I've always appreciated skateboarders, and I think skateboarding is also an art form itself, But as I've got older, I'm a bit of a scaredy cat when it comes to skateboarding. I don't want to hurt my knee or my elbow, my face.
What the
So
hell? I thought we were going to have a fight together.
I know, but we could do a bit of boxing.
Pandemic.
We could do a bit of boxing. But yeah, I visited Lille like 4 times last year, and I was supposed to be there now as we speak. I was meant to be there for 2 months working with fabricators to produce the skate park, but obviously I can't be there because of the pandemic. So we've been doing it virtually. We've been designing with the fabricators, designing this literally over Zoom and over WhatsApp. So it's been tough. But I mean, they've done a really good job. I've been getting images and emails and stuff. So yeah, it's ready. Opens today, 6 o'clock. So it's exciting.
So, and how about, the role of sport in your practice? Like, how does sport feed into your studio practice as a designer? Because I know you do a lot of sport, obviously. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
you're running and you're going to be running with us for the rest of the show. So,
Yep.
you're going to be appreciating that.
I
But
think pre-lockdown, sport has always been something that I've always, loved, and always, did practice. I think when lockdown happened, I became a bit obsessed with running because there was nothing I could do. I couldn't go into the gym. I couldn't see anyone. I was stressed. I was anxious, frustrated, and like obviously nervous about what was going to happen. What's the future of my studio? So every day I spend an hour or maybe hour and a half, or maybe half an hour running, sweating it out, and just really meditating while I'm running, and just seeing people and breathing the fresh air. So that wasn't for me. That got me through a tough time running, So, and also it's allowed me to think differently in a way that I never would have thought before. So it definitely helped me during this 3 months in so many ways.
and when you're not, using it as a part of a kind of a stress relief and so forth, how does sport play in your life? Like, do you actually watch, are you a football fan? Are you, and do you see sport being more than just like a entertaining kind of field? Do you see, and do you learn from sport? So for example, like I spent my entire last summer reading the biography of Muhammad Ali. I'm a big fan, of course, of I mean, of boxing, so that's probably explain why. But anyway, Mohamed obviously is, known as a boxer, but he's also someone that has been very much, resisting the governments, refusing the Vietnam War, has been talking a lot about, the issue with slavery, and has been,
Yeah.
changing his name from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali and so forth. So he's not only, I would say, a sport figure, but he's also a political figure. And so my
Sure.
question for you is also like, do you think, because I can see so much, so much opportunity for sport to actually help us to reinvent every single field, creative field itself. Do you see that?
Yeah,
Well, do you get inspired by some shows or some sport or?
I do. I get inspired by lots of different sports personalities. So I've always, been a fan of Mike Tyson. And I think the reason why I think Mike Tyson, I think he's an incredible boxer. He's also what he's been through, and he's changed his, changed his life front from, he was so, or lots of sort of negative happened in the past, but he's a different person now. So I think Mike Tyson, people like Van Holyfield, Mo Farah, for example,
Yeah.
Anthony Joshua, again, he's someone inspirational, someone who's disciplined, hardworking, came from nothing, came to
Yeah.
something. So there's so many
Anthony
things.
Joshua, for everybody, heavyweight champion, right? In
Yes,
boxing.
of the world.
In case, because we might have some people here that are not into sport like we are. I mean, just to be clear, everyone, as well, I don't want to sound like I'm a professional sport person, because really I'm not.
Me too.
We all amateur. Yeah, apart from like, actually, we have some real athletes joining on this show. So we are some,
that's true.
we have some serious proper skills.
Well, I'm a wannabe.
We're gonna have, and actually she's with us, Rumaisa, here, but I will introduce you properly, Rumaisa, in a second. But you're the first ever like female boxer from Africa selected for the Olympics.
Wow.
So we're so honored to have you on the show, and you know more than anyone else what professional sport is about. But anyway, having said that, you know what, T, my other dear friend T is on the line. And while T is joining us on the line, T and I are going to have the luxury to watch you run. Minka,
T, I love T. I saw T
Unmute yourself,
in Darba.
Oh, yes, here she is.
Oh, okay.
Hello,
I'm on mute now.
So I guess,
running?
So I'm just going to explain everybody. This is like a sport bar, so it's pretty relaxed, and by the way, if you wonder where my jumpsuit is coming from, he fell from the truck at NASA, and then turns out I was just next door when it happened. So anyway, so, and actually, what is your sport gear? What are you wearing today? Can we see, Yinka? Because like, what are we wearing? What are you wearing? What is the kind of the outfit of today? So you're all into Nike gear, okay? Can we see a bit more? Okay, this is getting intimate, everyone. This is a sports show turned into a porn show. That's great. That's the way it should go. So, okay. So Yinka, look, that's it. Interesting shoes as well. We're gonna speak about shoes and trainers in a bit.
Okay,
anyway,
all right.
Okay, Yinka, this is your cue to mute yourself and start running. Okay. Everybody wish him luck. He's going to be running throughout the entire show. And he's going to show us some different places as we go along. You can interject at any point, Inga.
Okay.
And now I am with my dear friend T. Uglo. T. Uglo, let me introduce you properly. Also, how to introduce you really properly, I don't know.
No way.
Because
You can't
do so many different amazing things. You look beautiful. You have an amazing hue coming on your face while it's 1 a.m. in the morning where you are.
Yeah, I did not look beautiful. I had one of those moments of going, why am I awake? And then going, oh, I had to do the thing for Nelly.
Well, look, so fresh, right? So fresh, live from Sydney, everyone. Here come T. Uglo. So T, you are, and you've worked for Google for more than 10 years now. You're Google Creative Lab Director, not just in Europe, but also in Sydney. You started the Creative Lab over there. You've worked with so many different cultural organizations, practitioners. You have enabled artists, writers, and performers to look at new ways that they can use digital technology in storytelling. You're also not sure you're an activist. Everyone, be aware that T. Uglo is the person that actually made happen the transgender emoji flag together with some of her colleagues and friends, but it's a big piece of writing to make that thing happen. And what you might not know, and you should all know, is T. Uglo has just put out this legendary book, Loud and Proud. And this is a very fantastic book, everyone, because it's in your own word, and I guess you can say it much better than I am, but for you, it's kind of like the queer school, that book. It kind of gives you a sense of a bit of the history of the queer movement, starting from Germany and, you know, the fact that homosexual is actually a word that was created there, started from the first pioneer that started to speak about homosexuality back in the 19th century. And I'm just going to hand over to you because, of course, we're going to speak about sport and trans life as well. But I really love that that in your book you basically say that that's something I wanted to talk to you about, because I guess sport is also a beautiful platform to be, you know, loud and visible. But what you're saying is you believe in the political act of storytelling as a way of letting folk know that they are not alone. And I believe that being visible is the most helpful thing anyone can really do for others. It is an old idea, but it is true. And that to me is fascinating because, of course, when it comes to sports, you know, there is a few transgender sports celebrities, but I guess it's, you know, it's been kind of a tough love, the history of transgender rights and sports, isn't it? And you don't have any sport people in there, but you have incredible humans and speech and, you know, so get that.
No, we don't really have. I think sports people generally speak for themselves. They do their speaking on the track, as it were. I think there is a really difficult. I mean, the trans sports question, Nelly, is interesting. No one should be denied to the right to play sports, and any sport has its rules around the use of artificial stimulants. And I do think that quite a lot of trans women will have gone through male puberty, which is effectively taking testosterone for a long time. So yeah, that's kind of like there are always some issues. It's really tricky, like that idea of fair playing field. So many of the things can be, so many of the metaphors that we use, the ideas of fairness come back to sports, come back to kind of like, well, sports just a primitive kind of codified warfare, right? I mean, football is just two tribes not killing each other, ideally, although sometimes they do. And when it spills out into that, you realize that that's actually what it was all about in the first place. It's not really about anything else. It's not about sport. And the running, you know, like the idea that I think there's a very interesting thing about measuring. Okay, I've got a big thing about normativity rather than about being trans sports people, but I will talk about sports people, but not really about trans sports people. I don't think it's a comfortable space. I tell you what, the only comfortable thing about trans sports people is that if people would just understand that trans kids are trans and allow them to take hormone blockers before they when they ask for them, rather than making them go through puberty, as the gender that they are born, then none of all of these problems would disappear and no one would have to think about it anymore. But yeah, it's really tricky because obviously they're not, it's not a strong place. Funnily enough, as you were reading the book, I was thinking that actually, yeah, one of the most potent symbols comes from sports. It's not a speech, but you will know it, like if you and we've seen it again and again on our TV screens over the last month, which is this symbol, right?
Wait, I've got it. You're talking about Tony Smith, isn't it? And John Carlos.
Yeah.
Here we go. That's the Black Power salute from 1968 in the Olympic game.
Yeah.
1968.
And they were crucified for that. They lost everything for that. They were like Colin Kaepernick. They lost everything because they stood up. Winning your gold medal meant nothing, but they stood up, and they stood up for their communities. They stood up for their community in understanding that they had to exist within a system which was oppressive to them. And you know, sport's really interesting because it does have this kind of constant narrative of the Goliath, David and Goliath, the giant and the diminutive, like sort of like the underdog, the people that no one liked, the people that no one thought could win, the people that no one thought could make it. And that narrative is one that we use over and over and over again. I mean, I think sport is basically like this wonderful way of doing narrative. I think it's just an extraordinary, I actually don't think there is anything much more to it than a form of live storytelling and a form of cultural kind of like knowledge sharing. I mean, I like it when people win and people get excited. We've got the boys over the road and they get terribly excited all the time. And then you realize that no way someone scored a goal. And it's like, great, I'm really pleased for them. I am at the moment very much missing the Tour de France, which should be on right now.
Yeah,
and like I'm
we have
having
actually a two-time Olympic winner joining us in a bit. Hector
really?
Roca. Yeah, Olympic winner in bike. Yeah.
Oh,
Panama, you know, Olympic winning gold 2 times.
really?
Hector Roca, who is actually training boxer as well.
Oh, cool. What is it with the boxing in you, Nelly? What is that about?
Well, we can talk about it later on in the bar, you know, after I have had a bit of alcohol. But first off, I want to talk about you because I'm also fascinated about like, how do you use sport in your own practice? Because of course, you know, you've written the book, which everybody should really read. And there are some amazing, beautiful spoken words from everyone ranging to Monroe Bergdorf,
Yeah.
with a transgender activist and model, who I believe was also involved with the transgender emoji flag, isn't she?
No, that was Charlie. Charlie was the one who, Charlie Craggs is the one who's involved in the, no, Monroe's just basically like unbelievably fabulous. And she's just been reappointed, I think, as an ambassador for L'Oreal. She's someone who's really suffered at the hands of mobs, like because she became she was a model, or she is a model, and then she got dropped by L'Oreal for basically pointing out that white people are racist and that we live in a system. Whenever I love this idea, we keep talking about systemic racism, and no one seems to understand that doesn't mean that like people are racist. It means we're all racist. The entire system is racist. It's not the racism that's the problem, it's the system. The system is racist. Right. And we use this phrase, systemic racism, the whole time. And yet no one seems to go, well, how do we fix for systemic racism? And you want to go, well, to fix for systemic racism, we need to actually fundamentally change the system in which we exist. And you begin to break down the points of the system at which racism or sexism or homophobia or disabilities, all of these groups which are like, so I'm autistic, so like when I talk about being autistic, suddenly people look at me in a completely different way and they want to look after me, which is very weird because they didn't want to look after me for a very long time. And if they had, nearly think if I'd told them all the things when I was a child, if I told them that like I had like these mental health problems, and I told them I was autistic, and I told them I was trans, and I told them I was bisexual, like they would never have let me do the things. No way. And now I'm finding that even quite old, even quite senior, like I'm finding it harder and harder. Like they seem to want to look after me.
Yeah. Well, talking about looking after,
very nice of them, but it's like, how am I meant to do anything if everyone's too busy looking after me?
Well, look, well, we are talking actually about that. Like, we have to look after our friend Yinka. Yinka, how are you doing?
It's so lovely to see him.
Yinka, are you running still? Like, how is that running? Can you speak at the same time as you're running? Unmute yourself, Yinka, so we can see because we want live action as well on that show. This is like live podcast, you know.
T, are you running as well then?
No, I'm just rocking gently, darling.
Oh.
I'm having a cigarette. I'm like doing my bit for the bar.
Oh, God. This is exhausting.
So
it's very sunny though. It's sunny. You see the sun?
Like, was it this session where, you know, T, did you went to the running session at Design in Daba, which is this design conference in South Africa? Yeah, you went.
Yeah, so that was lovely. We ran up the hill.
So you went to run, and I remember you telling me about these micro shorts that you had for that running session, and that suddenly Yinka Hillary went topless, or maybe it's Marcus Fair who is running Design that told me about it, that he was really hot running, and then suddenly when Yinka removed his top, then he was like, okay, I'm not gonna remove mine, then I'm just gonna keep my t-shirt on because this guy is just there's too much hotness coming out. Steaming on. Okay, well, we are at it. Do we have actually our friend Ro? Ro, where are you? Is she here?
Yeah.
Ro Jackson, she's here. Ro Jackson, such a pleasure to have you as well with us in the sport bar.
Thanks for having me at the bar.
Yeah, it's a bar because it's a bar without alcohol right now, but there will be.
Well, I brought my pint.
Actually, there is perfect. So that's amazing. So you have your pint. Tia's got some booze as well. But we were actually discussing some really important questions about systematic racism, systematic racism as well.
Systems, it's all systems.
Systematic and systematic. Oh my God. Anyway, you know that. And very important to say about the role of sport as well in, in playing, in talking about, making communities visible. We were discussing about, of course, the famous Black salute from, Tony Smith and John Carlos here back in, 1968. But let's not forget that before all of that, we had Lucy Digslow, that back in 1917, she's the first Black woman who actually won a major sport title in the US. Yeah. And nobody talk about her, but you are speaking about her massively because you actually made a magazine who is dedicated to women's sports.
Yeah.
There to amplify as well women's sport. It's called Slow. It's an incredible sport magazine where you basically sharing some of the legendary, legendary.
Yeah, there's some true legends in there. People that have never been spoken about. Hopefully we got a good mix.
She's incredible.
She's amazing.
What's her name? I can't remember. She's
oh God, now I'm on the spot. Her name is always like the first in my head. Hang on, no, I've got you right here.
Well, that's great.
It's because I'm nervous at the bar. Let me have a look.
PGG. Yeah, PGG.
Yeah,
PGG.
Yeah. She's a Muay Thai fighter. She's amazing.
So I just want to be clear, Ro, you're the founder of that magazine with name after, like I say, this Black woman athlete that actually won one of the major sport titles in the US. You initially were, still are a designer and brand consultant in design, but really now you're doing this and you're opening up a new sphere for all, for all sports that doesn't belong to the male side of things.
That's a solid intro. I'll take that.
And everything in between. You're also representing everything in between. So there is queer voices as well inside.
Yeah, for sure. I always joke that I'm the founder of women's sport, actually, because but obviously I wasn't. There's some amazing people that have got. But yeah, to me, like when I found out about Lucy Digslow, I actually have a whole book on her somewhere in here, but and the book is like this thick, but it's all about her career as like an educator, and then there's just this like tiny bit on her, like just how she loved to play tennis and how she won this title, and I was like, it was like exactly 100 years after that I made Slow. And so when I found out about her, I just thought this is the perfect name, because it just felt like, what has changed really? Like, what has changed for female athletes in that time, for Black athletes, for, you know, anyone that isn't like a white man in sport, I guess. And so it just really felt like in 100 years, like, wow, what, like her story is still so relevant. Like tennis was just the thing that she did, that she enjoyed, and so many female athletes now still have jobs alongside like trying to be professional athletes. Yeah, so I think like that's why it really resonated with me, just feeling like what has changed and what can we do to push it forward. And I think, and like what you guys were talking about earlier with like using design, you and T, Nelly, that like using design as like a way to organize and like push communities forward that like have not necessarily always had a voice is, I think, yeah, really important to me. But having it in print, because we were publishing online for like 2 years before we did the print magazine, and having it in print is, I just think, really special. I don't know if you feel this, T, with Loud and Proud, but like which looks amazing. I'm really excited to read that, but like there's just something really, obviously, that like some of this stuff people can find online, but like knowing that it's in print and it's gonna maybe stick around and people will be able to hold it, and was a really important thing to me.
It's an amazing thing, isn't it? It's a very peculiar the way it really matters. I remember like and actually sort of like I've done lots of projects over the years, but there's still something very powerful about paper and about the longevity of it, and the fact that, you know, it will be there.
Yeah, which is so funny, because it's not like a very, you know, it's easily destroyable, but there's something about paper that we truly like respect and want to keep and maintain and protect. And so I think that's,
I spent a lot of time trying to work out why. I spent a lot of time on value systems. Speaking of systems, Nelly knows all about this, and I spent a lot of time trying to work out why digital books were not as valuable, like why we didn't think that things that were digital, which is the same content, which is all your research, all of your pictures, all of your images, and why if they are on it's so hard to talk to you when Nelly's tuning away into the camera.
No, I'm just like looking at Yinka, like Yinka is actually stopping now. Yinka,
I know, I can't go and get a pub.
Running. You cannot stop running while we are talking about
I want a quick break. Recuperation.
You're an athlete, you cannot stop running. I mean, this is the lesson I'm getting for like, just showing off on his Instagram.
Let's go again. A quick break.
I turned up to the bar not doing so. I didn't realize that this was like also group exercise. I need to like get the dumbbells out and start.
Yeah, bring on the dumbbells while T's talking to us. Yeah, do that.
Bring him out. Bring him out.
Bring
him out.
So T, sorry. So we were at T. You were talking to us, T. About systems. Yes, you were talking about systems.
Oh, value systems. Like the idea of paper is such a peculiar value system. It's like the words are not the same. Like if you took the words, like it becomes more valuable because it is physical, and because you can own it, and because of the paper. And you can definitely take the words out of that and nothing changes. It's a lot of things that we look at in the world that where the value of them, like if someone comes and gives a very famous, sings a song and they sing it in the Royal Albert Hall, and there's queues and everyone has to wait to get in, but then if they sing it on the pavement outside, not quite the same thing. And there's no real reason. It's all about how we frame our content, how we frame information, what as a culture we expect things to be.
Totally.
And it's the same with people, what we expect people to be. So very much with sports. Oh, I tell you why this started. I was having a very interesting conversation about whether football games without crowds were as good as football games with the crowds. And it was I was like, no, I don't think they are. I think they're actually just not as good.
Yeah.
Like a book without a cover.
Yeah, because also I think like, I mean, that was part of why I wanted to do something in print as well, because I knew people would take it more seriously, like brands would take it more seriously, and people would be like, oh, you made a thing, even though I'd been making a lot of things already, but they're like, oh, okay, I get it now. You like packaged it really neatly for me so I can understand it. And that's something that I respond to as well. Like I really appreciate when something is neatly packaged for me. And but yeah, I think with the crowds thing, it's so interesting because also the fans are such a big part of sport. Like I think it wouldn't make any sense if it was the same. Like we don't just watch football to watch football. Like we watch football to talk about it. We watch football to show up together. We watch football to for our mental health and build communities and all of these other things that are like, as you were saying before, like about stuff that isn't what's happening on the pitch. So it's definitely, I mean, personally, I quite like the fake cheer sounds that they like play. And
I haven't had a chance. I've heard about them. I really want to.
Funny. I think it's so interesting though. Yeah, but I'm kind of into them. But yeah, like without the fans in sport, like has a big hole in it. It just doesn't exist in the same.
But maybe I can ask you both, what do you think in terms of the event industry? Like, you know, do you see that this is going to be our future to go digital with like fake humans kind of uploading? Like, where do you see that is going basically?
Yeah,
I mean, that's one of the key questions. Like, this is where I think that sport is just so interesting for us to look at as designers, as creatives that are in the event industry, right? It's like, look at how sport is to some level paving the way to maybe a different way of doing it. Like, I don't know if it works. I we are discussing the fact that perhaps is, you know, what you mentioned, T, about whether or not this football is better with or without, you know, audience member. I feel like there is something about that still is paving the way towards like maybe starting to rethink the way that we do things in relation to.
I think like, I mean, there's always going to be pros and cons for me. Like some of the pros that some of these things are like way more accessible to some people than they would have been otherwise. So that's amazing. But, and even like in terms of music concerts or like, you know, stuff can be cheaper to live, like way cheaper, or you don't have to live in a certain place, or you don't have to be able-bodied, or all of these things that are really important. But also I do think that there's something like in sport when you it's not just about the athlete, but when you do see the athlete up close and you see what they can do, and you kind of do appreciate it on a different level, I think, especially if it's not a sport that you're like that familiar with, or so I think there's room for both. Like I think it's, for me, this whole time is just a really nice time to reflect on, like, well, it's not a nice time at all, like it's actually been really shit, but like it's one of the opportunities is to like reflect on what did work for us before and what didn't, and what we get to like take into the future, and hopefully there'll be a bit of both strands, because I wouldn't really want to be without either now.
Yeah, I have to get up tomorrow for this is a very interesting point, because I'm talking to the culture industry. I'm part of a I forget, it's like the Arts Council but for Australia, I think, and we do they're doing a digital thing, and we did a kind of group thing, and they invited me along, and I got quite cross because I was like, how dare you come and ask us how to bring digital into culture? We have been here for 20 years. I've been working for 20 years in this space, and I have repeatedly faced the same objections, which is it's not really part of culture. It's not a real thing. There is no place for it, or it can go and sit in the education wing, or maybe if you make an artwork, it can go in the foyer, or you know, or it's marketing. And it's been very curious with watching or trying to explain the idea of compression that you have, the latency that you have when music is compressed. It can be, as we know, it can totally disrupt that industry, and that actually all they're left with is the liveness of a performance. And so the live performance becomes more special still, that uniqueness, all of the qualities that Rose talking about, that thing that, why is it that seeing it in seeing it, even if people do hold up their phones, which annoys the hell out of me, because you've actually spent the money to see it.
Yes.
And to be there.
And
it's the same with sport, right?
Can I just say this is my perfect cue to actually introduce our new member of the sport bar, Rumaisa Boualam. You are an Algerian boxer and the first ever African woman to qualify for the 2021 Olympics. You are only, I believe, 25, And already back in when you were 20, you were already a silver medalist at the 151 kilogram category. I mean, you're incredible. Like, you're in the flyweight category. Are you still in the flyweight category? Is what I want to know. During the pandemic. Did you manage to stay fit? Where are you, Rumaisa? Unmute yourself. Show us how incredible you're. You're the real athlete. You are a real athlete. You're the ones that is making it to.
Yes. Don't worry. Still,
yes, here she is, our champion. What an honor to have you in our sports show. We're so honored to have you, Rumaisa.
Thank you. Thank you.
So is it late where you are now? Where are you in the world?
No, I'm in my room.
In Algeria?
Yes, in Algeria. It's I am.
So Rumaisa, look, you're a real boxer, female boxer. I'm saying real because, you know, I'm like I keep on talking to everybody about boxing and so on, but like I'm you know, I think if I was with you in the ring, I will stand absolutely no chance, right?
Really?
Well, I mean, let's face it. So you're like the first ever African female boxer to make it to the Olympic Games.
Don't worry, I will let you beat little.
Yeah, I mean, I'll come in the ring with you. I mean, my friend Yinka, where are you, Yinka? Will you come and fight with Rumaisa? We cannot hear you if you don't unmute yourself.
I said I'll give it a go, but I'm not a professional boxer, so I'm sure she will knock me out. But I'll try.
So Rumaisa, tell us a bit, like, how is it for you? Like, because you're training every day, like nonstop, like, you know, I mean, for you, sport is a real thing. Like, it's a physical thing. It's definitely not digital.
Yes, of course. With this, I mean, coronavirus, we have to still always in shape, and we do our best to never stop training, because they closed everything here in Algeria, and it was a little difficult for us. But now we are a little bit. We found a solution for elite athletes.
And so, so basically, you're like training already. Like, can you show us, like, what do you have any like things to show us, like, in terms of training? Can we all train with you, or is that a possibility?
I mean, now boxing, or
I don't know. Yeah, maybe. Tell me a bit more about what it meant for you, because of course you were going to go to Tokyo for the game. And then, of course, lockdown happened. So it's, yeah. How do you leave all of that?
I mean, this is a really big event. It's a dream of any athlete or boxer, or it was my dream from the beginning. And boxing became like lifestyle for me. I have 6 years or 5 or 7 years, and I'm boxing. And now I will do my best to do a very good performance and in the Olympic in Tokyo.
Yeah. So when is that happening finally? Like, what did they release the new dates for it? Because we will be going to Tokyo just to support you, right? Everyone.
Oh, really? I hope
we will take the full sport bar with us to come and support you.
If you come, I will take the gold medal.
I mean, I'll be there for sure. I want to see you getting the gold medal. I have absolutely no doubt that you will, actually.
Oh, I hope you will come, and I hope they will do the Olympics, because it's I mean, not officially yet the date of Olympics. They said in 21 July, but not officially.
So what do you think about that? Like, what are you already preparing mentally for the idea that you might not have an audience when you fight?
What?
The question I have is about the audience. Like, how is it for you to think about boxing without, you know, without an audience, because they might not allow anyone to come and see you physically on the ring?
Yes, it will be a little tough, because the audience is affects on good way of us. They support us, and when you hear them support you, or you do your best, and if there is no audience, it will be so. I mean, so I didn't find the word. Calm, très calme.
Très calme, yeah, very, very quiet. Yeah, for sure.
So quiet, and it will be so difficult. A lot of pressure.
And can we, I mean, Rumaisa, I wanted to ask you as well, like, so, you know, we are having like so some fashion designer joining us from the world of sport. Like, what is so this is your official Olympic, is that your official outfits?
No, this is t-shirt of Algeria. I mean, not an official outfit. The official outfits, it's like you wear it with the pictures, but with colors. There is red and blue.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, so legendary, so legendary. So Tien Ro, are you? What do you think about like meeting with the next future champion and Minka as well? Like, she's right here. Oh, you know, she's holding the medal.
I'll definitely come to Tokyo to see it. Happy to see Tokyo and see you take gold.
I do think it's amazing.
It's my pleasure.
Like, it's wonderful to meet you. I've been listening to Nelly talking about her boxing for, how long, Nelly? 2 years. So it is amazing. I know how hard it is and how extraordinarily hard you have to train. So I think it's an amazing achievement. Well done.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, really amazing. Nelly, how did you meet? How did you have you met before, like in real life?
So actually, you know, we met because I'm starting a new movie, Red Moon, and I'm looking for a doppelganger, and I want to join as well the national team in Algeria, you know, because my dad is born in Algeria, my mom in Armenia, so technically, you know, I can get my passport, my Algerian passport. So then I went to see Rumaisa, who is of course the legendary, you know, I mean, obviously she's the best given the fact that she's going to the Olympic. And I said to her, you know, Rumaisa, do you have any woman of 35 years old, you know, in the national team? Or, you know, and so most of them we started
like
to bond. We bonded from there.
They were all young. Yeah. I found one.
Yeah, she found me a potential doppelganger.
Oh, cool. So that's who you need to fight, the doppelganger.
No, you couldn't fight your doppelganger. Like an awful mental kind of.
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget that actually mental, spirits, and sport is a big thing as well. I mean, I don't know if Minka is still with us, running around, but we have our friend running around to try and unleash the, you know, the pressure. And actually, I'm just seeing that Ravi is joining us. Ravi Naidu. Rumaisa, thank you so much. I know you have to go back training, but please stay with us as well as we are unraveling and talking about sports, because we would love to. And actually, if you're going to train, take us with us. If you want to take your iPhone.
No, I train in the morning.
So no more. Now it's over. You're going to bed now.
Yeah, I will stay with you.
I mean, you don't have. I don't want you to feel forced or anything. Yeah, you know. Also, I know you're not allowed to have any drinks, and we are in the sport bar. So, but it's fine. We have also sparkling water for you, because we cannot do, you know, you cannot drink and do sport. I mean, that's just not possible. But I mean, actually, we cannot drink and do sport. But actually, the next person I'm introducing to us, Ravi Naidu, is someone I usually meet around a glass of red wine, because he always feed me with red wine. Ravi Naidu is the founder of Design Indaba, who is, well, Design Indaba is pretty much of a legendary design festival, the world's most known, you know, design festival, based in Cape Town. And he has established Design Indaba, but he's also, you know, across every single board. I mean, I don't want to say, but he's across every single board, but just like T. Uglo or just like Ro, all of you are pretty exceptional. You were awarded the Sir Misha Black Medal for distinguished services to design education and placing design at the heart of economics and educational revival in South Africa. But I just want to say as well that what people might not know about you, Ravi, is that you have a long relationship with sport, because you and your team designed the logo of South African football. But also the National Olympic team in South Africa has got a logo that you designed. You also put a bid for the Soccer World Cup, and you running pretty much every morning whenever you develop your design festival. And then right now you're in the midst of your midlife crisis, which basically that you've designed a sports gym, your own internal sport gym in South Africa to train. And you've been growing some amazing abdominals and powerful body shapes. Here we go. Showing us some kits. This is the way it goes in this sport bar. We see everything. I mean,
Hi,
Yinka,
Yinka. I can hear you in the background.
Ravi, how you doing, my friend? You okay?
I'm so
Yinka,
strong, Nelly. Thanks for that rousing intro.
Yeah.
I mean, we love having you. Yinka, show us as well your video. We cannot see your video.
I've had a quick break.
Some bodies.
I had
I
a quick.
mean, this is a sport show.
Listen, there's
We
no
also
six pack
want to
here,
see
darling.
some skin.
You want to see some? You want to see some skin? Yeah. Okay.
So Ravi,
Nelly.
tell us a bit more.
Yeah.
Like, how has it been for you? Like the lockdown, and also tell us a bit more about the work of that you've done in sports, because many people know you in the design sphere, but they don't know that you've designed all of this logo and you're so much involved with the sports industry.
Yeah, thanks, Nelly, and thanks for inviting me. It's been a very discombobulating, mad time. And I think the only thing that's given me some kind of sense of balance in the last few months has actually been being fit. And I thought to myself that, I should, while everything has becalmed, haven't raised an invoice since March, and things are largely quiet, I could just maybe dedicate my time towards getting fitter. And as you said, I'm going through a full-blown midlife crisis. So if there's any benefit from the lockdown, is the fact that I'm going to come out of it way fitter than when I started it, which is wonderful. And design may be one of my major loves in this world, but I'm an absolute sports nutter. Have been all my life, played active sport, loved it. And in South Africa, when I started my company, barring creative industries and perhaps a smattering of tech, almost all my clients were in sport. So I did work for the Football Association, the National Olympic Committee, and for many, many years helped on the bid to pitch for the Soccer World Cup for our country. And as it is right now, it's like almost 10 years on from that historic first World Cup in South Africa, the first World Cup in Africa in 2010. And these are the kind of projects that have really been part of the cornerstone of our company's work here in this country. And actually, during this lockdown, one of the projects I've been involved in with some friends was to work on a new idea for cricket. And we're about to launch it on Mandela Day, which is the 18th of July. It's called the Solidarity Cup. And it's a very alternative format of cricket where 3 teams play. So opposed to the typical way of 2 teams and a winner and a loser, we'll have a podium finish and have a gold medal, silver and bronze. And 3-team cricket will debut on the 18th of July this year, which is Mandela's birthday.
So you have like a big events happening, and right now on this sport show, you've just revealed this, first news. Like this is like, this is turning into like such a. Everybody is making some special.
It's a
news.
world premiere.
Are you going to announce us that you're writing a book as well?
Yeah, my son's just joining me. He's here in lockdown. He works a New York day, but we're about to start our gym session, and
Right.
This gym at home has become like the family den, which is fantastic. Here's the other bloke. He's at school in the final year of school. So this is Rahul and Rohan, and it's Monday. And if it's Monday, it's shoulder day. So and we start shoulder day with, just to warm up, just a shoulder press, which is a very, very good idea. Just a simple
Bring on the gun,
shoulder.
that's it. Ro is also a heavy weightlifter.
Rahul
and Ro wrote this amazing magazine as well. She's doing this woman.
Oh, really?
Slow, which you might know. Slow is the first
Warm up.
Black athlete that won the US competitions in 1917. Yeah, keep going. We will keep on talking to you. And actually, can I just ask you, we have Rumaisa here on the phone, and she's the first ever female boxer from Africa selected for the Olympic Games. So it's
awesome.
This is happening right here. Are you?
This is just out of shot. We need some lessons.
You have
you as well.
You see? So Rumaisa, you can come and train in South Africa now.
Please.
We had the Cup Africa before in South of Africa.
Yeah,
you have right.
Yes, in 2014. 2014.
2014, il y a quoi?
La Coupe d'Afrique.
Ah, you went there?
Yes. South Africa, l'Afrique du Sud.
Oui, c'est ça.
Oui.
En 2014.
On a fait la Coupe d'Afrique.
So she went there in 2014, but you're not blasé, right? T'es pas blasé, tu peux y retourner quand tu veux. il t'invite dans sa gym perso.
Ah oui, je vais venir.
He's saying she's coming, she's joining. Ravi, be prepared.
Please be my guest. Come to Cape Town. You know our legendary hospitality, Nelly.
Yes.
Thank you.
But she's not like Rumaisa cannot drink because she's a proper athlete, like proper athlete, they don't drinks. They don't do drinks.
I drink water.
Okay.
Water. You can test out some like new level of water. But anyway. So Ravi, what are we doing now? Are we doing some like
we're gonna do a shoulder sequence today, which starts with shoulder presses.
Yeah.
And then after shoulder presses, one of the exercises which we really love is called an Arnold, after the legendary Arnold Schwarzenegger. And it's basically, an Arnold is something like this. It goes up and across and then back down like so. That's an Arnie.
Okay, everybody, bring on like, what do I have? I have like, I just have.
That's a beautiful movement for shoulder mobility.
I have like a Star Wars thingy. This is it.
So we could carry on our session here in the background while you continue with the rest of your thing.
Keep going because we want to see you regularly. And where is Yinka? Yinka, are you still running?
Because it's making me so happy that T is just having a fag in the background. Shoulder session. I love it.
I was just thinking, I've smoked for
Hi T.
years.
Greetings.
Hi, how are you, darling? I'm
so strong. All the better for seeing you.
So I've been like captain of rugby teams and done my running, and I like when I was in my hospital, I used to go for a 10-kilometer run and then come back and sit in the garden and smoke cigarettes for an hour. And I do it every day.
Whatever makes you happy, I think.
But Yuri Gagarin was actually smoking. Yuri Gagarin, the astronaut, right, was actually smoking quite heavily as well, even though he was like also a very good sport person. So I mean, and so
who was the French fullback? Serge Blanca. See, he's the worst influence. It is actually sports people. I remember watching Serge Blanca I'm not sure. It's probably before most of your time, but he was a very famous fullback for the French rugby team. And my sister and I used to watch because we played rugby, and we used to watch the rugby, and he would be there during the training sessions smoking away, and we were like, oh well, that's fine then.
I mean, this is the name of a new film or a new book, Sports and Cigarettes. Sports and Cigarettes. That's the next session I will pitch to Marcus Père Desine, where basically what do you say?
They can get away with it. That's why it's like rugby players drink like so many pints because their bodies just like go through it. I don't know. I mean, that's not science or like. I definitely don't.
Yes, it's this great tragedy about for sports people, I think, which is that this desire to get better and better and better has led to less and less and less interesting lives.
Well, actually, talking of which, I have like someone who is smoking quite a bit, David Goldblatt, who is a sport writer, sociologist, journalist, and author. You're pretty legendary, David Goldblatt. You are born in London in 1965, and you now live in Bristol, which is a Bermuda Triangle of football success, but also the place where we now are missing a statue, a slave trader statue, the one of Edward Colston, which has just been pulled into a pond not long ago, you know, so that's that. That's a lot of things that are happening in Bristol, a lot of very interesting things. So in 2015, you basically won the William Hill Sport Book of the Year Award. And you've written a book called The Games, A Global History of the Olympics. And you're teaching pretty much everywhere, but you're also a professor at Pitzer College in Los Angeles. And I believe you wanted to talk to us about the Olympic game and climate change. But also, I've got you on the phone together with Rumaisa, with first ever female boxer to be selected to the Olympic game. And I know, David, that you hate the Olympic Games. You hate the Olympic Games. So, and you smoke. Usually you smoke cigarettes, so I don't know what's happening. Maybe you stopped smoking over your lockdown. I don't know what's happening.
I'm just not smoking indoors at the moment. It's an outdoor pursuit.
David, it's one. I'm gonna give myself a pass because it's 1 o'clock in the morning here, or 1:30 in the morning. I really should go to bed, and it's winter. So I'm in Australia, so it's really cold out there. Otherwise, I would go out.
What do you do?
Got the door open.
Yeah, I wasn't actually going to talk specifically about the Olympics. I was going to talk about sport in general and climate change. And I sort of come to it from a funny direction because 30 years ago, I wrote a PhD on the sociological and political theory of environmental degradation. When climate change was called the greenhouse effect. And it had only just actually begun to get on anyone's agenda. So I've got sort of deep roots in environmental theory and environmental politics. And, you know, along the way, I got slightly diverted into writing about football and sport, but I've been looking for a way to kind of close the circle. And two things, really. One, when I thought about why football in particular is the world's most popular sport and the world's sort of, you know, most captivating and viewed sporting and popular cultural phenomena, you know, what is it about the game that, you know, has made it even more kind of sort of it's got under the skin of the world? And I think there's something about football's capacity to deal with uncertainty and chaos that is deeply attractive and is resonant of the times. Football's a mad game. Anything can happen, you know. Unlikely turnarounds, upsets. It's the kind of, you know, the ball is rarely under control anyway while it's being played. So it has kind of resonance, I think, with an era in which we live, in which we're dealing with chaos and uncertainty that we have collectively unleashed. And then the second reason that I wanted to come back to climate change was I've participated quite a lot in XR, Extinction Rebellion protests over climate change in the UK. And I've attended quite a lot of meetings and, you know, bless, I'm in North Bristol. So this is the bit of Britain that voted for Remain in a higher percentage in the referendum than anywhere else. You know, it's the, I live on the UK's #1 independent organic vegan high street. And so the numbers are huge at North Bristol's XR, you know, like 120 people show up to these meetings. And of course, everyone's white, pretty much everyone's middle class, quite a lot of old folks. And that's no problem, right? That's good. But the nature of the climate change debate is that we need now to be talking to all the people who are not thinking about it and all the people who don't want to think about it. They are the most important people to be talking to. So how can you talk to them? And in the course of the conversation in the meeting, you know, people were sort of, yeah, that was an issue. And I said, well, 500 meters from where we are now is Bristol Rovers Football Club, and 7,500 to 10,000 people go there every other week. That's quite a lot of people who are really not thinking about environmental issues, who we really need to be talking to. How do we make that connection? So over the earlier this year, I went to a website called climatecentral.org, and you can put any address that Google Maps can cope with into it, and you can say, what will the state of sea level rise and flooding be here at any year between now and 2100? And you can use different kind of models, extreme models, more conservative models of climate change. So I put in the addresses of all 92 football clubs in the English Football League, and I discovered that 23 of them will be annually completely flooded or underwater by 2050. So Grimsby Town better be taking up water polo, because they sure as fuck won't be playing football, all right? And Middlesbrough, okay, the stadium's going to be fine, but they're going to have to buy a fleet of boats.
This is it, everyone. We have David Goldblatt predicting the end of sport as we know it, not just through the pandemic, but actually because of climate change. This is it. No more football, everyone. Okay, well, let's keep going. So
it's going to be tricky. You know, I mean, it's going to be even worse for winter sports. All right, winter sports, man, are they in trouble? 10 out of 19 Winter Olympic hosts will be unable to host Winter Games again in 2050 because there won't be any snow, or there won't be enough snow. You know, at the 2014 Australian Tennis Open, which was played in temperatures of like 42, 43 degrees, 1,000 members of the audience had to be medically treated for heat stroke. Wilfried Tsonga's sneakers melted. 9 players had to withdraw from the tournament because of heat-related illness. And there is so much more of this to come. So
David, tell me, how can we then think about sport in the next like 5 years, say?
Well,
like if this is not an option, if we are all going to be having our foot attached to the ground because it's too hot or whatever.
Sure. So
then is there even like, I mean, should we even bother thinking about the future of something that is just over?
Well, we have to, because I mean, it's, you know, at the moment, I calculated on the back of an envelope the global carbon footprint of sport, which no one has tried to do before.
This is it, everyone. Stop everything you're doing. We have the actual equation. Okay, tell us. So what is it?
There are lots of ways of calculating it, but at the upper end, global sport is the equivalent of Spain or Poland, like 0.86% of global emissions. That's quite a lot. I mean, it's not China, I know, but really, that's quite a lot. So there's a lot to be done in terms of, you know, actually dealing with the problem. I mean, sport is part of the problem as well as a victim of that. The one good piece of news that there is that there is a UN Sport for Climate Action framework drawn up 2 years ago. So at least at the level of the UN and some of the upper echelons of sport, some folks have kind of got it that's an issue. And the deal is with the UN framework, they're saying everybody in the sports world needs to sign up. You all need to commit to carbon neutrality by 2050. Here's some things you can do, which is lovely. Of course, the real problem is that 2050 is no good. It's got to be 2030, 2032, because we've got to do our decarbonisation, particularly in the rich bits of the world now. And obviously, we need a framework that doesn't say, oh, please, could you do it? We need to say, like, if you're not carbon neutral by 2032, that's it. No Olympics. You can't hold a global sporting event if you're not carbon neutral. If you're carbon neutral, and that includes offsetting your aviation costs, because of course that's a huge bit of what global sport
is. David, right now nobody can move anyway. So is that like I mean, that's like the situation that in a way should be, you know, probably would be the one that would be supported for anyone that is trying to bring down the carbon footprint, isn't it?
So
basically what I'm trying to say to you is, are you happy to see this kind of new shift where we don't have any more audiences going to football games, but we just, you know, how is that the kind of the vision you had for that possible future?
Well, you know, there's different elements to it. So if people can't go and watch sport, there really is no point in carrying on with professional sport. I don't know if you've had the misfortune to watch any of the football games being played without crowds, but they are truly the most miserable and awful experiences of my life. I mean, talk about soul destroying and pointless. It's desperate. It's desperate. I mean, it just proves that, you know, part of what we're doing when we go to sport is like, this is a collective social ritual. Hello. You know, that's actually what we're doing there. And when that's not happening, it's terrible. I mean, I think, you know, this is going to go on for a bit. I mean, I expect at some point that football, large crowds will be permissible again. I mean, I don't think the pandemic is going to last forever. But that said, when we come out of this situation, it's a really good moment for saying, do we really need as much as we're doing? You know, do we need to have a world championship in athletics every year? You know, and what is going to be the balance in the future between grassroots and participative sport and elite sport? You know, and to what extent are we going to try and collect the imbalance? Because it seems to me, you know, in a plausible future in which we mitigate climate change you know, what are we going to be doing with ourselves? We need to be doing a lot less consuming, all right, and a lot more doing our own thing. And one of those things seems to me sport and exercise and participation in, you know, bodily movement of all different kinds. So I think sport is a really huge bit of a just and sustainable future, but not necessarily in the format that it's currently conducted. And you know, what is this for the Olympics?
So
and
actually, that's great that you're mentioning this, because we have another sport. You know, I mean, not sport. I mean, actually, sport writer, maybe Len. I don't know if you have written or if you're planning to write a book, but we would love to hear it. But I have Len Elmore here on the line, who is joining us in the sport bar. Len, you are a sportcaster, a lawyer, and a former National Basketball Association NBA player. I mean, I just want to say as well that you are quite exceptional, very exceptional, in fact. You did NBA for about 10 years. You had a 10-year career in NBA. Then eventually you went in Harvard, where you became a lawyer and a prosecutor. Where you served as assistant district attorney in Brooklyn. Then eventually you founded Precept Sport and Entertainment, which is a sport management company who is based in Columbia, Maryland, and you've been representing many different NBA players and so forth. And then eventually went into broadcasting career. And I know that you're doing this as well, David. You're also broadcasting, right? Like you're also doing sport broadcasting. Career, and you work for GP, CBS, and now you're doing the NCAA tournament for CBS. Anyway, lots to be said about you, but you also have been voted one of the Atlantic Coast Conference top 50 greatest basketball player of all time. And I really wanted you to join us because, you know, David is saying that sport, the way that we know it, is not going to be the same thing moving forward and shouldn't be the same thing moving forward. But I also know that, and this is something that we talked about with the students at the University of the Underground, we talked to them about the role of sport in building new politics. And I'd love you to tell me, what do you think NBA and any other league and sports can actually do for this kind of building this possible new future? Where are you, Len?
Well, I will say this, and thank you, Nelly, for the introduction. You're too kind. You said it just the way I paid you to do it. No, I'm just kidding. Bottom line is that I'm not sure about international sport. I know that here in the United States, unfortunately, there is an extraordinary focus on the dollar, and that's why so many are rushing our sports to come back. Most of it has to do with the money. Risk to the individual athletes, etc. Sport will, as the pandemic dies down in the next year and a half, 2 years, sport will try to go back to be the same. As I said, I'm not sure internationally what the case is, because America is drenched in sport. Sport is the greatest distraction that we have. That's one of the reasons why, I kind of not in favor of any sport being played in the United States right now because of what's going on. We've got the confluence of the pandemic, and we've got the confluence of Black Lives Matter and the civil rights struggle that we're facing now. And we're at a moment in time that we haven't seen in a generation where change can be made. And one of the greatest agents of change have been athletes who have a huge platform based on social media and the love of sports. And many athletes are now coming out, having their voices heard, whether it's trying to register votes, whether it's demonstrating for police reform and criminal justice reform, but people are starting to listen. And I think that that's going to be a key element going forward. But, with regard to today in America, I wish that sport would just say, okay, we're going to take a year off until we solve the problems, because they're more immediate. And with all due respect to, the environmental issues right now, which I think are extraordinarily important for folks who are getting killed and for people who aren't seen as equal under the law, that's not nearly as immediate as solving the social problem.
Yeah.
Nelly,
Yeah.
can I talk to a point that Len and David both touched, and Bo, actually everyone has
of
touched
course,
on?
we are all in the sport bar. So please, everybody, I should tell you, feel free to intervene at any point in time. Please.
I just think that David's point about soccer not quite being the same participatory, being the same experience without the participatory event of a crowd, and actually how that has a way of looking at other systems, and that actually more than anything else, what the pandemic, and I know we've spoken to your students about this, is that one of the most peculiar things about system change is that it requires violent and sudden action, such as shutting the entire world down. And it is going to be such a great tragedy to watch us take the most dramatic action that as a global population we ever have, and understand what it means to not fly, understand what it means to consume less, understand what it means not to live with these sports, understand what it means to address social inequity, because we actually have the time and the space to do that. Understand, to begin to understand and to listen to each other, because everything has stopped, because all the entertainment has stopped, because people have to go into the parks, they have to experience nature, because the air is clear, because actually they are less stressed, because they're not trying to do this busyness of going to work. When you stop a system like this, that is the only time that we can make fundamental change. And it is, I know we are doing small things, like racial injustice is a classic example. We talk about it as system. We were talking earlier about systemic racism and other systemic issues, and yet we are still looking at that as if it is the racism is the problem rather than the systemic part is the problem. And we are literally at a moment where we can possibly address what the system is, because we have enough distance, and the only reason we have enough distance is because of this awful pandemic. So I'm totally with Len. It's like there are so many things that could be looked at right now whilst everything is stopped. And it sometimes feels like we're not, or we're not going to, or the thing that we seem to be most keen to do is to get back to how it was, even though that really wasn't that great.
No,
Sorry.
it wasn't. No, it wasn't that great. But I will say that the racism and the systemic racism are pretty much hand in hand. If you look at the United States right now, we are a divided country, and unfortunately, with so many who have the fear, and from a racial identity standpoint, we have so many people who are fighting against people seeking equality under the law, and it really kind of breaks everyone's heart. The most encouraging thing, though, is to watch those who are out demonstrating, the diversity of those folks who are starting to recognize that's the attack on the systemic racism. The way we have to change things in the United States, we have to vote. And we have to vote
Yeah.
locally as well as on a national basis, because local politics has the greatest, most immediate impact on our lives. And oftentimes we neglect that to the sexier, more published and more publicized national elections. And that's something that we have to learn over here.
Yeah, I think just from the other perspective, from the rest of the world, I very much hope that the rest of the world is as well in watching that struggle. And yes, I agree with you. In the States, racism is actually a day-to-day existential issue, rather first and foremost, rather than systemic. But for most of the rest of the world, it's really important. Well, for the white world, it's very important to understand that it exists because of a system that endures because we refuse to acknowledge it. Yeah. That's why it happens. It is systemic. It is not because we are particularly racist, I hope, but it is because we don't address those systems. And I also include other issues around disabilities and mental health and homophobia and transphobia, obviously. And there are a lot of spaces and general misogyny and sexism. These are all structural things. And it's very peculiar that you get an opportunity to look at them the way we have at the moment. And I don't know. I don't know. Sorry.
And actually, talking about that, like, have you seen, I mean, obviously, Len, given the fact that you're still very much involved with NBA, this is a woman NBA. She's, I can't remember her name, Brianna Stewart, and she was talking about, George Floyd. She's been using her platform to talk about, the importance of like rethinking completely the sport industry. There has been many others, but what do you think should be the voice of sport at the moment? I mean, I seem to have understood that what you're saying is basically they should all say to everyone to go and vote, right? Is that what you think the next phase for sport is, to actually focus on developing this kind of political messages?
Well, that's certainly part of it. Look at LeBron James, and a number of athletes have started a movement, an organization specifically aimed at getting out the vote. If you look at the Republicans in the United States, led by Donald Trump, they're trying so many ways to suppress the vote. Voter disenfranchisement, voter ID, anti-voting by mail, because turnout means more people are going to vote probably Democratic. And they know that. And so in very many states, they try to exercise these strategies of voter suppression. The hope is that it doesn't work. But in the end, it's still going to take a lot of people who are going to go out and try to urge voters to take a position, to have the courage to withstand the suppression efforts and go forward. But that's just one area. There have been a number of areas. I know that Colin Kaepernick, when he started to kneel, that started a movement unto itself. And then there was a kind of a competitive movement in the NFL called a Players Coalition, who actually reached a deal with the owners to raise and contribute a ton of money to various programs around the nation. And one of the reasons I know about that is because one of the classes that I teach, we have been kind of commissioned by the NFL to observe and report on the efficacy of that initiative. And to this point, they put enough money in it, but they haven't seen the kind of results that they wanted to. And, so there are so many different ways from sport, so many dynamic ways that athletes particularly can step up and take responsibility. To whom much is given, much is expected, particularly among Black athletes in the United States today, based on the history. And by the way, I teach another course at Columbia called Athlete Activism and Social Justice, where we trace the history of active athletes or activist athletes all the way from the beginning of popular sport in the United States, which was after the Civil War.
And actually, it's a shame because we don't have Rumaisa anymore, but she's the first ever female boxer from Africa to actually make it to the Olympic Games. I don't know if she's still here, but I wanted her to meet you, because I think it's also important that she hear what you have to say about the role of an athlete being not just the one of, doing the sport, but also to kind of like voice, and speak on behalf of their communities and their belief system as well,
Yeah.
But I I'm fascinated by your career as well. So you were in NBA, then eventually went to Harvard, and then effectively became a lawyer as well. So I guess for you, it's this kind of pathway to move from, sport. I mean, you never really moved from sport, to be honest, but,
True.
to kind of like really go in competitive sport to policy making and identifying the kind of the cracks in the systems and kind of voicing concern on behalf of others is kind of part of your past. Do you know many others that maybe we should kind of look up as well, that everybody should kind of like look up as as an example of doing things?
Well, I mean, there are certainly current players and there are past players even before my time. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is a very outspoken individual. Others who have kind of paved the way, Bill Russell. These are much older players, much older than I am. And then you have the current players who have stepped up, as we talked about: Colin Kaepernick, LeBron James, Malcolm Brogdon. There are so many guys right now, and it's almost like, there's so many voices out there that the message might be a bit diffused, but nevertheless, it's still out there. And I think people here in the United States who are diehard fans certainly are listening, and and many are following. There's always that percentage that tell us to shut up and dribble. That our job is not to, focus on what's going on in the world today, but to just do our jobs, which is, absolutely ridiculous as citizens of the United States and citizens of the world. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Len, I just wondered if you could talk on that theme to Bubba Wallace, which is slightly out of that realm, but I'm so inspired by what's happening in that sport.
Well, as we all know, the Confederate flag is a symbol of oppression. These were terrorists who seceded from the United States, hoping to overthrow the government, have their own government, and the reason for it was to promote and maintain slavery. They lost, and these monuments that have come up, and including flying the flag, that wasn't really a thing until the 30s and the 40s, when Jim Crow, those laws that subjugated Black people, until they were attacked. And in some way, shape, or form, building these monuments were a monument to the old Confederacy, to keep people who are in favor of that type of segregation, to keep them in place and to spur them on, and also to intimidate those who weren't. And with Bubba Wallace at NASCAR, which is an extraordinarily white sport, it's car racing. I think he's the only African American racer on their top list. And he essentially was a victim. His garage door had a string tied in the form of a noose, which is another form of intimidation, hearkening back to the days of lynching, when lynching was a predominant method of extrajudicial execution. And being that the rest of NASCAR, who heretofore had kind of a bad reputation with regard to race relations, suddenly, they've recognized the side that they wanted to be on. And so many of the drivers supported him. The organization NASCAR supported him. There's an outpouring of emotion during one of the races. Certainly, subsequent to that, they found that supposedly that wasn't placed recently, that it's been there, that noose has been there a long time. But, from a relevance standpoint, it's irrelevant when it was placed. The fact that it was there, signals, again, there's some people that are just diehard. But the fact that NASCAR rallied to Bubba Wallace's defense and rallied to his welfare is extremely critical, understanding that, change has to come in the United States. And for a sport like NASCAR, as I said, which is predominantly white, predominantly Southern, for them to rally to his side is extraordinary.
Leonard, I have a question, if I may, for you. I've been to a NASCAR event in the United States, and not only is it very white, I would say it's very Republican.
I would say that too.
The closest I've come to being at a Trump rally. I mean, this is not country club, old school Republicans. This is Trump's base. And so what I'm interested, I think it is amazing that NASCAR as an organization has rallied in this fashion. I'm interested to know if you have any sense of what your average NASCAR fan is making of this. Not the people at the top, but the people who are going to watch NASCAR?
I would say that the average fan has had an awakening. There are still holdovers. I mean, we've seen on Twitter videos of people still flying the flag, still cursing out Black Lives Matter demonstrators, still, you know, trying to maintain white supremacy without actually saying it. They're still out there, you know, as cowardly as it might be. But I think the overwhelming number, first of all, the largest number of NASCAR fans, believe it or not, are women. You know, over 50%.
No, seriously?
Yeah, over 50% of NASCAR viewers are women.
That's so interesting. I had no idea.
Yeah, and Trump actually is losing white women from a polling standpoint. He's starting to lose them for whatever reason. But as I said, there are still holdovers, and usually the loudest voices are those holdovers who fly the flag for those purposes to promote white supremacy.
So talking about awakening in a very different place and community focus, I'd say to you all that we here have Joshua Granell, who is also known as Peaches Christ, who has just joined us in the sport bar in the midst of a very intense conversation around NASCAR and you know, and politics around this sport and many other sports. And you're also from the United States, just like Len, but you're from the West Coast. From West Coast, am I right? Yes, West Coast, San Francisco. Joshua Granell, you're known as Peaches Christ. You are the legendary face behind the drag queen, world-renowned drag queen, Peaches Christ. And so Peaches Christ has been pretty much everywhere, has been putting together tons of different events. You are a filmmaker, you are American underground drag, but also cult leader living in San Francisco. And you have also directed a film called All About Evil, with also featuring Natasha Leon, Thomas Dekker, Cassandra Peterson, and Ming Stoll. And I really wanted you to be on that show as well, because I think people tend to forget that also being a drag is also a sport in itself. Like, it does involve at a different level. It does involve actually training. It does involve as well getting into a character and also maintaining that character all night long. Let's not forget that sport is also, you know, related to nightlife somehow. Joshua, you're muted. We want to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, yes, it's funny. I grew up with a real aversion to sports, you know, as a kid, but now I would say that you're exactly right, that my career and being a drag performer is way more physically exhausting than I would have ever imagined. You know, just the wearing of the corset and the heels and the wig and the jewelry and all of that, it is physically exhausting. And then, you know, I have to say, getting ready to do this show, I kept thinking about my relationship to sports and how, you know, over the years now, I've actually embraced sports as a form of performance. I mean, we know that dance, of course, dance and, you know, that kind of performance is athletic. But, you know, at my shows, I've integrated mud wrestling into the shows. You know, whenever I show, you know, a Joan Crawford film, I host an event where we get mothers and daughters to mud wrestle each other. And I've also done drag queen roller derby, because, you know, watching roller derby, you know, there's something so, I have a lot of women friends, cis women friends, who actually are on real roller derby teams. And I've been asked to go and MC those events. And there's just something so fantastic and empowering about seeing a really great, aggressive roller derby match. And so I was inspired by my women friends who do roller derby to create an event called Drag Queen Roller Derby, where it's all drag queens in roller skates, you know. And we have a wig snatching round, of course, you know, and the team with the most wigs, you know, wins. And so, you know, I've kind of embraced sports as a part of performance.
I also wanted you to, you know, tell us, because obviously you're working within the realm of the nightlife, right? And you're putting together events And both you and I are usually putting events together, you know, like, I
Right.
mean, not literally together, but we are like, you know, producing them, making them happen. And you to a complete different scale, like massive shows in the Castro Cinema in San Francisco. I mean, your shows are pretty legendary. Let's put it this way. Like everybody, if you've never been to a Peaches Crest show, you must, it's a must in your life. Let me tell you that. But you basically, you know, it was interesting to me to bring you also in that, you know, in that sport bar, so we can discuss the future of the event industry as a whole, because I think to me, there is a very clear connection between the way that, you know, we as nightlife artists and producers, events, you know, maker and so forth, have to think about the future of, you know, our fields in a way, but
Right.
also the way that, you know, sport and sport athletes have to also start thinking about how their, you know, their shows are going to go moving forward. And so I don't know what you know, where you're seeing the kind of the future for you, at least in the nightlife, and, you know, and do you think you can learn from the way sport is doing things at the moment?
I do. I think that you're exactly right. My what I'm best known for are the large scale events that we do at the Castro Theater in San Francisco, and then we take them out on the road. And you know, it's a lot of people packed into a building, right? The Castro Theater is 1,400 seats. We often sell out, which is wonderful. But the fact is, I won't be doing a show like that anytime soon. Certainly not in San Francisco. You know, the mayor and the governor have made it really clear that that is not coming back for a while. And I agree with them. You know, I think that that makes sense. You know, and so looking at things like Broadway and other theatrical, you know, more than nightlife, I guess I'm a theater event producer. So my friends who are in nightlife, it's a little bit different because they are opening some bars, especially where there's outdoor components or food, and lessening the capacity. But for theater, it's very tough because we run on a very small profit margin. And, you know, we have to be sure that a theater is full to some degree, or full enough for us to even break even. So with social distancing, that's often not possible. And then there's the other side of it, which is that theater is about fellowship. It's about sitting with your you know, your friends and your family or strangers and enjoying something together and laughing and, you know, breathing aggressively into the air. So looking at sports, you know, especially outdoor sports and things like that, and wondering how I can move some of these sorts of shows maybe into an outdoor space, you know, that's something I've been thinking a lot about. And then the other thing is, I sort of am lucky that I was a little bit ahead of the curve in that I created a few years ago with some business partners here in San Francisco, who operate some of the larger buildings in San Francisco, such as the San Francisco Mint building, which is like our most historic building, and the Palace of Fine Arts, which is a giant, almost warehouse building where the Exploratorium used to be. I partnered with them to create a company called Into the Dark, where we do immersive theater. So I'm really looking at how can I do theater for small groups of people at a time, move them through a space with actors behind plexiglass, possibly actors in masks, customers in masks, and sort of stage something on a more intimate scale. And I have a show that I've been doing the last few years that's already designed this way. But it's a haunted attraction, so it's more classically, you know, designed for that sort of immersive theater experience. But I'm thinking, how do we take the haunted house and turn it into a, you know, a comedy drag show, you know, or any form of storytelling where you can take small groups of people and take them through something entertaining in a much safer way, and maybe even move some of that stuff outdoors.
Len, I want you to speak here, because I think like there is a lot to be learning from the two, you know, the two places, whether it is from NBA, you know, like the sports realm, and learning from Joshua and the theater, you know, production scheme, and the way that Joshua is going to be running his next shows.
Well, I mean, I think that Joshua's at a luxury from the standpoint that, you know, that kind of indoor stuff and, you know, trying to manage crowds and things of that nature might be a little bit easier based on the numbers, as opposed to, you know, major sports with the, you know, with the thousands and thousands of people. And, I'm not sure California rules, they've been changing so much as far as following the COVID-19 protocol. And I wish you luck on that. But,
Thank you.
by the same token, when you're looking at the broader scale of sport in America, I think again that it's something that people have to think about. And we discussed it before, the distraction that it presents, the magnitude of pulling these things off. I think it's just something that maybe we should just kind of stop for a while and rethink it, revamp it, and bring it back when it's far more wieldable, because it's just so difficult right now. But the only thing I can also say is that with regard to entertainment and sports, athletes have always wanted to be entertainers. Guys have record labels and guys want to be rappers and singers and stuff. And rappers always want to be athletes. Now, I don't know how many athletes want to be in the drag queen business, but, I'm sure some do. But that's the whole thing. That crossover between sport and entertainment is always there, no matter what the genre is.
Well, certainly
Nelly.
Dennis Rodman was a borderline drag queen.
No, and actually, Joshua, I think he did dress in drag a few times. So, more power to him.
Did he consider himself a drag queen?
I'm sorry?
Did he consider it drag?
I don't think he considered. Yeah, I mean,
No.
to some extent, he knew what he was doing. Back in the day, he knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
He was just being different and, probably being a little bit irreverent, but, he's finding something in himself. And, that's why I give him credit for that. I don't know, some of his other choices, I'm not so sure I endorse.
So talking about LGBTQ plus youth inclusion in sports, actually, we now have Lily.
Nelly.
Yes.
Nelly. No. We can't. We will get to the. Can we do Lily's introduction in a second? I just can't believe that you're overlooking the fundamental similarity between. You gave this nice long introduction as to why drag and sport are somehow similar. And you're a feminist. I'm really surprised at you. It's like both drag and sport are almost exclusively male dominated. They denigrate women participants. They don't empower the female participants, and they don't amplify social issues that surround minorities. And those are the things that I think would be really interesting. I mean, we don't have time to do it now, but like next time we get Len and Josh on, we can maybe talk about the fact that there are issues coming from sports, and
for sure
maybe Lily can talk to it.
Well,
yeah, I don't need a grand introduction. I'm also happy to sort of hop in. And
you've got to wait because Nelly she loves doing her introduction.
Do your thing. Do your thing.
But Lily, I guess this is the perfect time for you to come in because this is a special sphere that you've been looking at pretty much your entire career, and you're actually the creator of the Play Proud campaign for LGBTQ plus youth inclusion in football, and you're working for a global network called Football for Good. And actually, I'm going to stop here and let you, jump right in and tell us, how street football, and how you think that sport can actually speak about social issues and discuss, like also gender related.
Yeah, and I mean, I appreciate your comment, and I hope, I don't want to just sort of jump in and give a whole lecture, but I feel my work specifically is trying to dismantle the heteronormative and gendered ways that sports are built upon, which is pretty impossible to do. But I work for an organization called Street Football World that uses sport as a mechanism for social change in communities, 87 countries worldwide in 127 communities. So basically using soccer as a tool, a mechanism, a platform, a catalyst for change, working in various social topics. So I started when I've been in the sector for now over 10 years. And when I originally joined the sector, I saw so many social topics being addressed, and LGBTQ youth were completely ignored from the conversation. So our sector was saying that we're creating intentional physical and emotional spaces for kids that need it the most, yet LGBTQ kids that are in low-income communities, people of color, are facing all of these different social topics were completely ignored from the conversation. So I don't need to spit, facts at you, but 4 out of 5 LGBTQ youth are not out to their coaches. 73% of LGBTQ youth feel that sporting spaces are homophobic and do not feel safe coming out. And so sort of my work has been, how can we work with young people to be able to change these spaces, to not make young people feel that they need to distance themselves as a queer person and as an athlete, or as a sport practitioner and as an activist. And so how can we really blend those two identities? And I think far too often we work with young people that feel like they have to stay closeted to be successful on the field, or feel like they can't be out and be themselves. And actually what we've seen statistically is when people feel that they can, be comfortable and share their sexual or gender identities, that they're actually have far better performance on the field. So hopefully that wasn't, I really don't want to go on a too long of a lecture, but this is a really interesting topic. And I think it's key to be able to talk about, obviously, the shifts that we can make now in the sporting spaces, but how we can be more intentional when we build spaces for young people that are coming up in our professional systems and then in our non-formal sort of nonprofit systems as well. So
can
really
I ask a question?
Yeah.
Lily, congratulations on the work that you're doing, and obviously very supportive. But we see in the United States the foolishness of even laws being passed. I know that we discussed one law that is denying participation by LGBTQ, and transgender players in particular leagues. If they're identified as such, they're not going to allow them play, particularly transgender. What can we do with regard to states that are passing laws like that? And you know how we are in the U.S., man. We can be as backwards as anybody in the world.
Yeah, and I don't want to, that's an important conversation. And I think as we've seen with our state legislation, it's all crazy patchwork at this stage. So there's sort of the statewide legislation, and that changes in different leagues. And it's totally a disaster to be able to navigate that as a young person. And I think, at least in my work, how can we create non-formal spaces for LGBTQ youth or their allies to be able to have these conversations? So oftentimes, and as we've seen after the most recent election, homophobic hate crimes and assaults on young people have gone exponentially up since the election. And so if young people don't feel safe at their church, by their local government, their federal government, at school, or oftentimes their families, and sports isn't making them feel safe, we're not doing our jobs. And so how can we create our spaces to be able to welcome these young people that often have no place to go? I'm sure Leonard, there's thousands of mentor programs in the US, mentor programs for young people, boys and girls clubs, you name it. 6% of those are geared toward LGBTQ youth, 6%. And so for me, I think there's a lot of advocacy work and work that we need to do on the local, state, and federal government. But on a small scale, how can we create and design physical and emotional spaces to be able to support our young people? And if we are creating these spaces, we need to be intentional to be able to, welcome the most, hard to reach young people. And I think there's a really interesting similarity between sport and drag, and also sport and theater. And oftentimes LGBTQ young people obviously feel more inclined to move towards arts and culture, because I think it's easy for them to sometimes dress in costume and feel like they can be separate from who they're presenting. And so
safer.
Exactly. So how can we make people feel that their whole selves as a queer person, as an athlete, can actually make you a much stronger person on and off the field? And I think that takes work at the grassroots level.
Yeah, see, that's the dichotomy. Most of the time you're sending young people to sports, organized sports, where they can be safe, where they can be protected from the streets and from the external nonsense that goes on. But yet unfortunately, you can't find a lot of places to send these kids, and that's the shame of it. So good luck.
But also, Lily, I think you're doing something super interesting where you've been teaching to the students at the University of the Underground. And one of the ways that you've been teaching them football is by actually asking them to define the rules. That was super interesting for me to see. It's can you explain a bit to everybody how does that work? What is the kind of the typical way that
I mean, so at a minimum, you can sort of use soccer or sport as a way of engaging young people to come into your program and as a hook, but you can also use it as a medium to convey social topics. So, you know, one of my favorite games that an HIV and AIDS awareness organization does, grassroots soccer in South Africa, is they want to teach girls to be more confident asking and advocating for condoms when they're engaging in intercourse. So one game that you like manipulate the game and you use a soccer ball, and the ball is it's kind of like tag, if you want to think of it. The ball is your protection from not getting tagged, but the ball is called a condom. So you have a bunch of 13, 14-year-old girls running around the field saying, give me the condom, give me the condom, and getting them used to being able to have these conversations, being used to not giggling when they say condom, but your condom protects you from the game. And then using that tool to be able to have these, you know, these conversations that if you put a bunch of, you know, adolescent girls in the classroom and talk about condoms, that would go completely over their heads. So at Street Football World, we designed a game called Football 3, which is basically breaking the game of football into 3 parts. So the first part is setting rules and intentions. We call it, you know, the first half. The second half is actually playing. And the third half is, you know, having conversations about the intentions and play and breaking that down. So how can we, as a collective, come up with the ways that we're going to play the game and set the intentions ourselves? And we don't use any referees. We don't have any interferences, no coaches. So the young people actually have to, you know, be intentional about how they want to play the game, play it, and then afterwards they debrief how the games went. And we do that across the board, all ages. And it's a way to really get people to engage beyond just stepping on the field and being sort of, less active participants. Passive.
And actually, like while we are talking, like, where is Yinka? Yinka, are you still running? I just want to make sure, because we had like one of our sport bar member that was running around. Yinka, show us if you're still running, because we are hoping that you're going to be able to maybe play soccer right now, since we have Lily on the line. Well, okay, look, maybe he's going to reappear once he's ready for it.
There you go.
Is he back?
Hello.
Hello. Well, actually, we don't have Yinka, but here we have Bruce and Hector. Papa, mon papa, Roca, Hector, Roca, Bruce and Hector. So happy to have you both. Look, you're actually in the same. Lily, are you in New York right now? Or?
Yeah, we're sitting in the gym in Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah, our offices are we're in Dumbo, right by you.
Oh, yes. Okay. You're in Dumbo. Good.
So let me introduce you both, because this is quite legendary what's happening right now. We are having, you know, well, so Lily was talking about soccer and was talking about, you know, how we can speak about social issues through sport and especially, you know, through soccer. But then this is something that you've done pretty much all of your lifetime, to talk about society and societal issues through boxing in your case. So here we have Hector Roca, who is known for being the best Spanish speaking, but let's put it this way, the best ever boxing trainer in the world, who has trained Hilary Swank for $1 Million Baby, and is a 2-time Olympic cyclist, winning, you know, 2-time winning, Olympic cyclist from Panama. And now we have also with us Bruce, who is the director of the legendary Gleason Boxing Gym in New York City, who is one of the oldest ever, I mean, is actually the oldest ever boxing gym in the USA. You have been pretty much, you know, in sport for the past 30 years. You've been, you know, in your gym, we have seen Jake LaMotta, Muhammad Ali, Roberto Duran, you know, you've seen, and you still have like tons of world champion, boxing glove champions. They all go to train at Gleason Gym. You've been doing, you know, as well, you've been running the Metropolitan Amateur Boxing Federation. You've been involved in all different, I would say, national related selection committees. And now you're actually running as well a charity, which is called Kids Have a Dream, where you actually work about, you know, you actually bring boxing into the community so that young people can also express their anger and kind of speak about issues and societal issues through boxing. So all of that, you two, we're so happy to have you both here. Yeah, we were discussing, you know, the role of sport in society, but also in politics, So over to you both, and I'm so happy to have you both here. I've got my boxing gloves.
It's great to be part of this panel. Great. Very nice. Good group of people here. But boxing is extremely important, not only to politics. Oh, nice, Hector Roca, boxing trainer, champions in Brooklyn, and I know him.
Yes, he's just next to you. Yes, tell us.
No, boxing is very important not only to politics, but it's very important to people in life in general. When you come into a boxing gym and you train, you get yourself in a condition physically, but you're actually getting yourself more mentally in condition. And when you learn how to focus and concentrate, work on your fear, how to overcome your fear, you become a better person in life. The physical end of it makes you a better, healthy person. Boxers have good nutrition, but their workout helps people with heart disease, diabetes, cancer, many things, and particularly right now with all the stress in this world with the virus that's going on, the boxing workout really helps you mentally. You can come in here and get your frustrations out, hit the heavy bag, hit the speed bag, and you feel much better about yourself. So the sport is really one that is very, very helpful for everyone, whether you're a competitive boxer or not.
And so tell me what's happening right now at Glisson Gym. What's the situation like for all the trainer, like Papa here next to you, Hector, my Papa, yes, who has been training me as well. So grateful to him, yeah.
It's disastrous. We're in the state of New York, and the governor has not opened all the businesses to this point. And up until a couple of days ago, boxing gyms and all gyms, not just boxing gyms, were in phase 4, which was the last group to open in the state of New York. But unfortunately, our governor has decided to remove gyms from phase 4 and put us in limbo. And what I mean by that is the reopening process ends with phase 4. There's nothing after that. However, gyms have been removed from phase 4 and were put on a shelf in limbo with no direction. So right now we do not know when the gym will open. And without the gym, then many of the trainers like Hector and the other many trainers that we have are pretty much out of work, like the other 44 million Americans that are currently out of work.
And so actually that's a question for you as well, Lily, like, because, I'm obviously really conscious that you're both involved with youth work, with the Kids Have a Dream charity, which I would love you to say a few words about as well, Bruce. But how do you keep in touch with the community? How do you keep in touch with the youth, your youth, the kids that usually come at Glisson to unleash their problems, their issues, their families, how do you, what has been the kind of the situation for you? How have you been keeping in touch with them, and and how are we going to manage this situation? And maybe Lily or Bruce, you came up with a great idea, or you did something great that can inspire one another, or
No, I wish I was that intuitive and could come up with some new and great ideas, but they're already out there. Social media has been a very, very important and prominent point during these last 3 months. So we're keeping in touch with everybody through our social media. I have a very large email list. Then we're on all the different social medias, and we're in touch with them all the time. As far as my Give a Kid a Dream program, that's my charity, or one of my 4 charities, but the one that's the oldest and has my love the most. It's called Give a Kid a Dream, and it's for underprivileged youth, both boys and girls, that live in the 5 boroughs of New York City, and they're having a rough time of it. They're usually in some sort of a problem, and they have to be referred to the program through a parole officer, a school counselor, a minister. And once they're interviewed and brought into the program, we give them tutoring, as well as boxing training, and we take them on many trips and camps, etc. And right now, the den mother, Teresa Arca, she's been in touch with them. As a matter of fact, we had a little group meeting just yesterday over here in the Brooklyn area. So it's social media is the way we're staying in touch with everyone. I'm on a campaign right now to get the gyms open, particularly boxing gyms. So we're doing a lot of social work there and contacting a lot of politicians and a lot of media. Unfortunately, most of it's going on deaf ears, but we're trying.
And Lily, what has been your journey so far? Like, how are you keeping in touch with everybody?
Or to Zoom? I'm just kidding. But yeah, I mean, it's shitty because it's sort of like how we all are coping with how, changing to virtual. You're trying to make the best of it, but it's definitely way less effective being virtual. But yeah, Zoom and just, different virtual exchanges, but it's far less effective. And, we're still able to run programming, online, but the engagement's really low. And also, a lot of low-income communities don't have access to internet and to computers to be able to engage with these programs. So it's also disproportionately impacting people that don't have access to getting online.
Lily, we have similar problems with that kind of idea of engagement, which is that, of course, when you do get to sort of rural areas or lower income families or areas where everyone does not have their own iPad or their own laptop, or their own phone, suddenly going online to and having your history show where who you are talking to and where you are suddenly becomes a very dangerous space. I mean, it's very much like with violence against women campaigns. One of the first things you need to do is try and conceal the URL so that people can't see that also they're looking for a helpline.
Having sensitive conversations, oftentimes in front of families or even abusers. There's the power of leaving your space to go to a physical space is really a privilege that has been taken away from a lot of youth.
And so I want also to have a chat about how we can also support the coaches too, because I think it's important. You mentioned it as well, Bruce, and it's the same for you, Lily, as well. And, and of course, Joshua too, for all of the actors that you have in your shows, and T as well with all your team. I mean, mind you, Google has been, supporting their teams pretty fine so far. Man,
I don't have a team anymore.
Okay, well, oh dear. Well, what I wanted to say,
they took it away.
I think it's a broader conversation to have as well about, okay, so now we're going digital, obviously, and we are going to use social media, but people tend to forget because we got so used to get incredible content for free, but I think it's so important to also have this conversation there that to say that, well, actually, yes, it's great. You're going to watch your favorite coach, doing sport and smiling into their Instagram or whatever, but the reality is like they need to also eat, they need to pay their rent, they need to do all of that. So I think it's important to also remember that there is no free content out there, and that if you see your coach doing these things, also if you have the means to, of course, support people, then you should be able to do that and and support the work of great people like Hector, but also like all of the incredible coaches that you have, Lily, that are also part of the community, right? So how can people do that? Is there a way that they can donate to Hector or donate to your coaches, or Joshua supports, as well, the work that is being done by all the LGBTQ plus community as well in San Francisco and so forth? How can people be invested? Because I guess this is the urgency, as well as, we are obviously talking about possible future here, but
I think one thing, at least in San Francisco, what we found is, drag queens pretty immediately just decided, we aren't going to stop performing, and so they went online almost immediately. Drag shows that were canceled in bars due to COVID-19 went virtual. And what we found was it was the community supporting the community. So the tips and the money and things that were typically coming from other artists, right? And other people who were collecting unemployment and freaking out about how to pay their rent. You know, I was really tracking that, and there's fatigue around it because, you know, now that we're months into this, the idea of watching a drag performance, I'm sure it's similar to sports, isn't the same as being there or, you know, seeing it in person. And so there's a bit of fatigue. And I think for, at least in San Francisco, and I think it's great that T is on the Zoom, because I'm finding that here we are surrounded by more money than almost any city in the world. And, you know, where we have movements of drag performers, and I'm kind of circling back to something T brought up, you know, especially drag performers, we were the first to create Black Lives Matter marches in the city. You know, at least in our drag scene, which is born out of the Cockettes from the late 60s, we've always included cis women, people of color, trans women, identities that we didn't have language for back then, that now in San Francisco, you know, drag performers are running for political office. You know, Honey Mahogany, who's a trans identified drag performer, you know, who appeared on RuPaul's Drag Race, just won an elected seat, you know. So the scene here with the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence is performative, but it's also about pushing political agendas, social agendas, participating in supporting each other's intersectionality. I think it's been great. Where we don't get the support is from the huge tech companies that are now, you know, that come to our shows, the people that work for the tech companies. We have more billionaires in San Francisco than you'd want to believe we have, yet we're climbing over drug addicts, homeless people, runaway trans youth who have nowhere to live. And I would love to see us put more pressure on some of these corporations to give back to the cities that they are living in, you know, where they have this abundance of money.
I think this is a really valid point. And thank you, Josh. Thank you also for coming out with your politics, because yeah, like absolutely. Like I have a major issue with New York and Stonewall, bless them, for slightly hijacking the notion of gay rights as having been somehow born there. It's like and I'm very fond of pointing out that the actual first riot occurred in Compton 10 years earlier, and belonged entirely to drag queens, transvestites, transgender people, lesbians, butch lesbians. Basically, the only reason that the Stonewall got raided was because the police can arrest you for wearing 3 items of clothes of the opposite gender. They weren't arresting gay men, because you can't arrest a man for being gay. It's quite a hard thing to do. Like you can arrest them for sodomy, but you need more evidence. So it has always been our community that was actually attacked. And it has been very interesting watching, as with all of these mythologies, us getting written out of that. And Josh, your point is really, really spot on, which is that actually the story, much like the story of sport, becomes a narrative, becomes a myth-making narrative. A lot of stuff in theatre and entertainment, these myth-making narratives, like end up being owned by groups that maybe are not the source material, shall we say, and they perpetuate systems of oppression. We have been going back and forth throughout this whole couple of hours about systemic problems and how we address systemic problems. And yeah, it would be nice if they could give money, but again, like with systemic racism, the first point is to understand that they are systemically oppressive. And there's lots of very, very interesting points of systemhood. I had a feminist attacking me for some trans activism that I was doing, which pointed out was to do with J.K. Rowling. She was like, women have suffered 7,000 years of oppression. I was like, yeah, I think trans people have probably been around the same time, but you haven't even seen us.
Right.
Because we've been so fucking oppressed by all of you. That we have barely survived. We have survived because it's actually innate and organic, and nothing that we could do. And I wish there was something that we could do that would mean we were otherwise, but we can't. So all of these things are systemic, and it's very, very tough to go, not to feel, I don't know, not to feel, I know that the only thing we can do is put plasters on, and that's all we can do. But then you look at the things, and again, and we keep coming back to this in this chat, this hour, these 2 hours, and go, what can we do? What can we really do? Well, we can, yeah, I mean, I talk to my large giant tech company a lot, and having talked to them a lot, having spent 10 years trying to persuade them of exactly this kind of detail.
So just to clarify, you're working at Google. I'm just wanted to make sure that Bruce Hector knows, because they might not know.
No, I've worked there for 15 years, so I have been part of that for a long time. I don't particularly enjoy coming to San Francisco anymore. I used to love it, and I mean, and that's really, really sad. To see a culture. Actually, the first time I came was in '98, and I stayed in Castro, and it was heaven. And I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to go to university. But yeah, the like in the most horrible way, the only thing that I've realized is that I would rather that they were apolitical than political, because I would rather that they refused to take an interest. And they have, you know, every now and again, they do interesting things, like the way we are now. They took a view on facial recognition about, Google did about, 7 or 8 years ago, that put facial recognition back 5 years, which means that we recently got to the place that they were 5 years ago. And we are now having that conversation at a much bigger scale. So it's very hard sometimes to express the things that have happened and that they do. But honestly, I think I've kind of, it's like balancing a scales. I'm just like, let's not have value. I mean, let's not be amoral, but let's be amoral. I mean, I don't know what the word is for trying to ask people to not take a point, but
and Bruce,
I know what you mean. I was just gonna say, like, at least right now, young people are giving us hope, because they're seeing the connection between capitalism and a government that's run by corporations. And certainly that's true in San Francisco city government, where the biggest tax breaks companies get aren't from the small business owners and the struggling mom and pop businesses. The biggest tax breaks go to Twitter and Facebook, et cetera. And so I do love that the Justice Democrats and the young people are going, we're not going to vote for you if you have an interest in these corporations. And they're really seeing that's, I mean, you talk about putting plasters on the problem, but it might take a really long time. But if we may have to dismantle capitalism the way that it's being supported right now, because I just don't see how there's a future, at least for the United States. You know,
we were talking about environmentalism with David earlier, and there's this really interesting thing, which is that if you ask what they want to do for environmentalism, it's like, well, we just did it. We did it because there is an immediate existential crisis, which we're capable of understanding, i.e. we're all going to die, as opposed to a long-term existential crisis, or actually we're not all going to die, like whatever it would be, 0.4, 1% of the world's population, which is a lot of people, would die. So we will stop everything. And that's an immediate existential problem, which creates this most astonishing effect I have ever seen in my lifetime. I think any of us have ever seen. And we know that we are facing a long-term existential threat where we all die, but not maybe, I mean, maybe us, but we all die.
Before there is a little things that we can do. And Bruce, Hector, yes.
We're here.
Do you have any positive, do you have any thoughts about how we can support you? I mean, yes, I guess do you want to react maybe to some of the discussion we've just had about modifying systems the way that we know them?
Well, it's fundraising is very difficult in our area. Boxers are probably very low on the totem pole of most people's thoughts and cares. Most boxers come from your lower socioeconomic areas, so they're not really thought of or cared about too much. And when you fundraise, I'll give you an example. I have several charities here. One we mentioned, which was Give a Kid a Dream. Give a Kid a Dream is for youngsters, real human beings that are between the ages of 10 and 18. And they come from very poor backgrounds. Most of them are abused. And we're trying to help them out and give them a second chance at life. When I fundraise for these youngsters, I get almost a zero response. One of the other charities that we have out at Gleason's Gym is for dogs. It's a Sado project for homeless dogs. When we solicit for the dogs, we get thousands of dollars. So that tells you, for the dogs, everybody will open up their pocketbooks and help out. But for human beings, particularly from your lower socioeconomic areas, we don't get a big response. So if anybody on your program and you're hearing wants to make a contribution, they can send it to Gleason's Gym on behalf of Give a Kid a Dream. Gleason's Gym is at 130 Water Street in Brooklyn, New York, 11201. Or you can email us at gleasonsgym.com, or you can call us at 718-797-2872. All contributions at all sizes are certainly welcome. In this past 3 months, we've had several very nice people that have made contributions, but they're few and far between. So we will certainly accept any help from you guys.
Yeah, and make it, whoever is watching this blog, make it big, this contribution, please. I know that in the design industry, obviously, there is different scale of design industry per se, but I would say architecture, whoever has got some bachish, please put them in the right place. Obviously, we are discussing about modifying the system as we know them, but do support the communities as much as possible. Thank you for that, Bruce. Lily, do you have any thoughts about how we can best support your coaches? How can we do that? Obviously donating, and what's the...
Yeah, of course, financial contributions go a long way, but I would just say now that we're all sort of, it's a weird moment of like pausing, but also this intense movement as well. And I just say, take the time to educate yourself and engage in local community organizing in your community. So I think oftentimes we look abroad or we think large scale, but really take the time to educate yourself and, speak to people in your community and make the most of having this moment before everything, the chaos returns. So yeah, appreciate everyone listeing as well.
And what we are
going to return, I think we're in the middle of chaos right now.
It's only going to get more chaotic, but I really do think taking some time and space to educate yourself and challenge yourself is huge, and connect within your community. So, as you talked about in San Francisco and the changes that we're all seeing in cities across the country and the world, we need to do our part to connect with people in our community in a different way. And hopefully Lily, the uprising is bringing that up.
And so
can you do a plug for your... Oh.
Yes.
I'm gonna do a plug for Lily's, you got to give the URL, Lily. Tell us where you're...
I was gonna give my email. Is that scary to put?
No, there's a lot. This is YouTube.
Okay, you go, everyone. Give us your emails.
Well, he put his phone number. I was.
We are live on Daisy. We are taking over the world's biggest blog, design and architecture blog. Please go free. Make some special announcements. Share the love. Do a wedding announcement as well. Yes, Lily, please go.
But drop me in if anyone's interested in getting involved or wants to contribute big donations. We only accept big. No, I'm just kidding. My email is Barrett, BARRETT, BARRETT @streetfootballworld.org. So all one word, streetfootballworld.org. Name is Lily Barrett O'Keefe. You can look me up and contact me on the Street Football World website. And I would love to have everyone engaged, big, small. It's always just, for me, having these conversations is a huge opportunity and movement. So appreciate the time.
And we will make sure, I have Sebastian here, we will make sure that Daisy is also sharing your detail. Joshua, you wanted to say, how can we support the drags in San Francisco and all?
I mean, these days, it's all about following us on social media. And I do get all my messages at the Peaches Christ on Instagram. And, you know, I'm verified on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. So if you reach out to me at one of my verified accounts, you're communicating with me. And God, I've really enjoyed hearing what everyone has to say.
We're not finished yet. We're not.
I know, but I just wanted to say that.
I'm wearing some sneakers on me because actually a good, you know, someone that has been able to, you know, connect back with the community, but also like do some pretty incredible stuff is our friend Ali Ali. Ali Ali, where you're a sneaker designer and you're the first ever woman to create a unisex Air Jordan. And the Air Jordans are quite legendary. We all have wear Jordans in our life, boxing, not boxing, doing everything. All had the Jordans. I mean, Jordans is Jordans. And here she is. She hacked into the system. She went into Nike, first ever woman to make that happen. And since you've been having the most successful ever collection of trainers and sneakers ever seen in the life of Nike. Yeah, and I mean, I guess we were talking about the sport industry and how difficult it is for us to even see a future. But also the fashion industry is pretty much impacted as well. So, I mean, yeah, do you want to, you know, you can kind of keep on talking within the, well, anyway, blah.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Alayli. I'm originally from Los Angeles, here in Los Angeles as well. Went to college in Chicago, absolutely loved it. I'm an Army brat, you know, dad was at Fort Carson in Colorado. So, you know, always loved traveling and, you know, my love for fashion started at a very young age. And, you know, I always wore sneakers and I was definitely one of those women who was more of a sneaker than a heel girl because I'm like, I need to go places. I need to be comfortable. And I've always worn Michael Jordan sneakers in particular, as well as Nike. But you know, when the opportunity came, it was because of my love for these sneakers. And it was actually amazing because I felt like, you know, women in the space were being recognized. And, you know, women in the space of creating sneakers is pretty unheard of. So before myself, about 10 years ago, there was another woman who actually created the first women's Air Jordan sneakers. So to think that we needed 10 years after to reintroduce a woman creating sneakers was actually a really big thing. And when I went into the space of Nike, you know, they said, oh, do you want to make the sneaker for women? And I said, well, I wear men's and women's clothes, so I would hope that we could do it for both. And you know, with that, my intention wasn't to be the first woman to create a unisex sneaker. It was really just to represent, you know, all ages and all genders. But then, you know, when the rollout started happening, then it was like, she's the first woman to create a unisex sneaker. And I think that really put, you know, women more towards the forefront of this fashion industry, especially when you're creating shoes, because, you know, I like to always say that, you know, we sometimes neglect the fact that women who are mothers are buying sneakers for their children, and we need to give back to them. We need to give back to the young girl who, you know, wants to go to school and look good and, you know, wants to be with her friends out and still have a great outfit on and just feel good about herself. Because yes.
And really, can we wear them? I mean, I have wore them doing boxing. But
I mean, these particular silhouette probably might not be the best for boxing. You know, you might need a real training shoe. But there's definitely other women in the Nike space who have had the opportunity to create more training shoes. So again, like the fashion space is really opening up, I would probably say within the past 3 to 5 years. And, you know, Nike recognizing that women are also a really big industry. And, you know, if we look at some of the self-made women, you know, in Forbes, they're amazing women who've created things like Spanx sneakers.
And talking of which, you're with Bruce and Hector here. We are the first to have written actually a book for women to do boxing, isn't it?
Oh,
like
wow.
you have this boxing training, like, you know, for women that you started, Bruce, because until you made it, there was just no entry point for, you know, anyone else than men pretty much in boxing.
Yeah, so I feel like, yeah. Oh no, I mean, I feel like in every industry in the world right now, we're just really recognizing the potential of women. And it's just, you know, it's really exciting to hear all these great, you know, progresses that we're making right now.
But are we going to even need sneakers moving forward? I mean, I think so, but
I definitely think we will need probably more sneakers than heels, you know, because we're all reevaluating, you know, what we really need. And that's also the great part of the fashion industry right now. I think everyone's recognizing, okay, I think that, you know, we were self-indulging too much. You know, what can we do to make things more sustainable? What can we do to, you know, try to figure out how we can make things that are closer or more local? So, you know, all these talks are happening right now, which is really exciting because, you know, during quarantine, which is a time that we really needed it, we, again, like you guys were saying earlier, to reach back into our communities and figure out how can we change things from a local level and then move up.
And how have you been doing it yourself, like for the past like 2 months? How has it been for you?
Yes, so, you know, still working with the Jordan brand right now. So we actually do Zoom calls, and, you know, when it comes to materials and product, you know, they'll send it to my house, and then, you know, we'll kind of do a Zoom call and run through it there. So, you know, the design aspect and, you know, the concept of dialogue is still happening. And, you know, it's actually amazing what you can do from your own house. I don't think I ever want to go back into office again. But yeah, it's really exciting. And I feel like, again, moving forward, we're definitely going to be making some big leaps, whether it's, you know, trying to be the most resourceful or whether it's including women in this environment.
So, so basically, you're quite. T, you want to say something? I can see raising your hands. I mean, T, here is a
I'm just weeping. I'm just like, yay.
I was like,
I'm just like,
because I was like,
yeah, that's exactly.
It's like 3 a.m. It's 3 a.m. for you right now.
You know what? It's actually, it's 5 to 3 in the morning. So I'm now totally off the clock in terms of what I say. Anything that comes out of my mouth is completely legit. So it's fine. I've been drinking coffee for like 5 hours. No, I just wanted to say that was so gorgeous to hear you give that story and talk like I think a lot of the things that come through again and again are about personal stories and that when I mentor, a lot of the people that I mentor, whether they are coming from sort of educational backgrounds where they've had struggles or wherever they're coming from, whatever form of underrepresentation it is. And sometimes I hate that I still have to do representation things within the design community, within the creative community, where underrepresented groups include women. That is a shocking thing. Like, sure, there are intersections within queer communities, within disabilities, within mental health groups, within, you know, all sorts of things, where those are intersections where underrepresented groups have a right to, but there are, it is amazing that in 2020, women are still like still qualify as an underrepresented minority in the design industry. And we've been talking a lot about, well, actually everyone's been talking about things that you can do. And I keep wanting to talk about how we burn everything to the ground.
Yes, the revolution.
Because we've stopped it. You're working from home. You don't want to go back to the office. I don't particularly want to go back to the office. I've been able to do my job. I'm sure you've been able to do your job. I don't understand why we have to go back to the office. I think that Nelly will have to do another entire talk on what happens to live performance. We nearly went down that route of what is live performance going to be, what is what are the design conferences going to be for the next, because even if you can, should we be traveling? Even if you can travel, even if you can congregate like that, should we? Because we know we shouldn't. And are we able to learn that? Like, so I'm very big on like the, whatever you've seen, not giving it up, but like every single person I talk to is like, you are only there for the next generation. Everything you are doing is not for you. It is for the people that come behind you, and they will see you. And I just think I see you and I'm like, yeah. Sorry, that was a very long way of going.
Yeah, it's quite phenomenal. It's like,
Thank you so much.
yours, I mean, Ale, this is quite massive. You know, we both met in a conference and I was just so happy to meet you. And then we've been staying in touch, but it's like every time I look at my foot, basically, I'm like, well, okay, I don't know if this is like really a thing that I should be saying, but that obviously you're with me every step of the way. Sorry, that was
yes. And you know, we plan to be, you know, we plan to keep, you know, telling women's stories and, you know, fighting for women's stories, because I think that's so important. You know, every woman has their own story and their own way that, you know, they grew up. And I think that's really important because there's another woman or young girl out there that can relate. And I think that's my main part of designing shoes is, you know, am I telling the story of another young girl who can look at this and say that she can do it, you know, regardless of what's going on in the world, just, you know, holding on to that dream and, you know, not giving up. So, you know, that's really what I'm about.
And can I ask you, Ali, can we see a future collab between you and Gleason Gym boxing, you know, here? Like Gleason, like they have a charity, kids, give a kid a dream. Lily as well, street football world. What am I saying? I'm like losing my mind. Sorry, everyone. What is it? Lily, street football.
That was spot on. Good job. Yeah. Beautiful. Street football world. Now she's going to be making sneakers for soccer players.
Yeah. So how can we see that happen?
Also boxing.
Yeah. What do you say, Bruce?
I said also she can make sneakers and workout boots for boxers, both men and women. And then if you're a designer, design a uniform for us.
Oh, I would love to. I would love to. That's exactly what we're trying to do right now. How can we, you know, reach other types of athletes that are in the industry and, you know, create something that's personal for them and, you know, makes them feel good when they walk out and, you know, they're fighting or whether they're playing basketball or football. So, you know, we've been doing one step at a time, but I think we've really been like, you know, running and kicking down this door. So,
love it.
You know, it's you know, possibilities are endless right now.
Okay, well, this is a really good way of saying goodbye to everybody, I guess. Oh my God. And actually talking about like amazing fashion gear, this is the Hector Roca boxing champion. Here
You
we
know,
are.
I want to say, I make a commercial for Michael Jordan because I got a program like Give a Dream to the Kid in New York in basketball. And I make the commercial with him for that. Yeah.
So your best mate, you know everyone, Hector. We know you know everyone, like, you know, and you've been also taking care of.
I meet more new people. That's great. You know, people I don't know before. No, I know them.
Exactly. And actually, you can all meet each other, support each other. You know, I've put you all in touch with each other as well. And everyone else that is watching us, you can also support every single of the speakers of today, support them in their endeavor, support them into, you know, the great work that they are all making in the world, and also all of the amazing vision they're bringing to life. So with that in mind, I'm going to, you know, I mean, I don't know, like it's a sport bar, so I guess there is a part where we close the door, but we don't really close the door. Things are still going to happen, everybody.
I'm waiting for all girls from Dumbo to come and get a lesson. I'm gonna give you an instruction.
Well, can we finish on a song like Papa? You know how much I love when you sing me La Bamba. This is the thing that kept me going, everybody, because I train with Hector. I'm part of his training team, and I'm a
No, she's good. Too tough. Too tough.
And everyone, you should support him. Venmo, give him some batchish, you know. Okay, tell me, sing me that song that gets me going a bit.
You want to make me sing or no? I am boxer trainer, not singer.
I know, but you're very good at singing. Look
Next
at
time when I see you, I do.
Everyone, I burst. Can you see?
Oh,
Like,
well,
I burst.
yo, it's triple
we have
time.
in the show, like this is what happened in lockdown. I have burst NASA legendary like astronaut.
Oh, you joined your line.
Yeah, I've been
Nelly, YouTube will ban us.
Too much excitement and not enough training. Papa, okay, let's finish on this amazing song from you. And everyone, we're gonna stop the live after that song is.
What you want? You want I sing? I can sing.
Yeah, I want you to, but you know your song that you sing.
Okay.
Private. He only sings to you.
Okay, you sing La Bamba. Para bailar la bamba. Para bailar la bamba. Se necesita una poca de gracia. Una poca de gracia y otra cosita. Y arriba y arriba.
Here we go.
Right.
Okay. Everyone,
Thank
massive
you.
love to you. Thank you all for joining us today and support everybody. We love you all and make sure that you enact change in each and every single field that you work in. You know, time for change and time for support as well in your communities.
Bye, baby. Bye.
Massive
Bye, lots of love.
And I can't wait for my next Jordans.
Yay!
Nice girl.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye-bye. This is a cue for you, Sebastian, to cut the live streaming now. This is over.